welcome everybody for joining us for like I think our first actual public legit Q&A. It's a
This is
brand new
it.
format.
This is
Yeah,
public.
it's brand new. We've just got all the technology working so that we're able to interact with all of you and we're able to hear your questions and kind of dig deep on certain things. So if there's shit you want us to cover, if you like this, if you don't like this, if you're like, yo, like Seth, turn up your volume, like any notes are super welcome because we're just kind of figuring this out as we go. But we wanted to start immediately opening it up because I know we've been doing these weekly classes with all of you specifically in the free group. And we've been working to kind of build this towards more being a school. And so we were like, well, what can we do while we're doing this development work to have it be more school oriented and just to be able to like basically like if this were my school and if it were brick and mortar, I would open up the shit every week and just let people come in and like check out the rooms and check out the staff and like have a listen and like ask questions and get to know us. So that's kind of what this whole thing is about. So anything goes really. Like we want to talk institution shit. We want to talk beats. We want to talk getting work in the business. We want to talk engineering. We want to talk production, mastering, whatever. And we can obviously sidetrack into some nonsense. But I'll just leave it up to all of you. Just let's go. Who's got questions?
Dope, man. I think this dope. I think this is very dope that y'all got going on, man. For a lot of people.
Thanks, Rep.
Just tuning in.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks.
People that just wanna. Cause I'm a beginner learner for us coming with the mixing part. I've probably been doing mixing now for about a year. And like I said, I use Studio One and just do everything in it.
Nice.
But actually talk to some people and get some good feedback on this, that, and third, I think that's hella dope, man. This gonna go a long ways.
Where's your studio at, man?
Yeah.
In house. So,
no, I mean like where you at on Earth?
I'm in Alabama. I'm in Montgomery, Alabama.
Oh hell yeah. Yeah. Clint's over in Tennessee. I'm in LA.
And hey Clint, I'm gonna come right up there and see you, man, one of these days, man.
Dude, come on. Come on, I'll take you get some good Thai food. We'll talk music.
Let's go.
Yes, sir. Man. Yes, sir. This is hella dope though.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
I actually had a question about getting work and kind of starting off a career. So a lot of people that I hear, they talk about how they had a path through working through studios and doing internships and then kind of just learning from people who knew better than them and working in studios. And I've kind of seen like, I feel like it's kind of going away from that now. And a lot more people, especially with COVID, are a lot more independent and working on their own. So what would your advice be for someone who's looking to not necessarily get their first credits, but just like, get their foot in the industry and just kind of get on a good path?
Really good question. Which part of the industry are you looking into? Like, do you want to be like in studios tracking, or you want to be more in mix? Like, where do you see
It depends. I think tracking and mixing are pretty intertwined, but I think I'd like to do a little bit more mixing and that kind of work.
Yeah, because like there's lots of different avenues in, like you're saying about like the kind of the old model of like the paying your dues, where you're gonna go get somebody coffee, and then eventually if you get coffee 40 times perfectly, somebody will like let you plug a microphone in, and then if you do that 40 times perfectly, eventually somebody will like let you sit next to the assistant engineer.
Right.
Yeah, that's totally over with. I mean, there is still that, but it's so location based, and it's still like who you know. Because I know people that have like literally tried to push into recording studios for years and just have never had somebody open the door to them. That same shit happened to me too. So like I tried that avenue and it did not work out, specifically in LA. LA ate me for breakfast the first time that I was here. So if that is what's happening to you, don't fear, because it happen to me and things worked out. But you do got to get creative about how you're gonna like how you're gonna basically snipe your clients and how you're gonna go for those types of people. Because if you do want to do tracking, you have to be able to like actually track. And so you've got to like, at least for me in the beginning of like learning tracking, it was I was just like, I got my hands on some reasonable recording equipment. It wasn't super expensive, it wasn't super great, but it allowed me to couple microphones, like I had an 8-at recorder like back in the day, and then I just was like the best friend of every band I knew, because I was like, I'm gonna record your shit, and they're like, okay, cool, and because like no work, like I'll just come to your rehearsal studio, I don't fucking care, we don't need a studio, like let's just like let me just get in there and start learning how this shit works and working towards that end. Because the more bands you have that are homies, like that's basically how I get work right now, is that it's people who know me and like what I do, and they want to hire me to do that same shit. So really, it's no different at this stage than it is at the beginning. I just have enough of that work that I can leverage to say, hey, here's what I do. And so other people hear that and say, oh, I want that shit. So really, it's just all about like getting your hands dirty and starting work. So you pay your dues the same kind of way, but you pay it towards the artist at this point. Because the more homies you have in that regard, then when you do get into a studio, or let's say they get into a studio, which happens all the time, is like a label will pick up a band, and maybe you were working with them, and they love chilling with you, you got a good vibe, and you would get stuff that they were like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, maybe it's not the best shit, but it's pretty fucking cool. We love working with this person. When they do get into big studios, often, and this is over and over, I don't need to name names, but I know a bunch of bands that like, big names, like people's names that are on plugins, that bands are like, yo, fuck that guy. Like I don't like working with that dude. He phones it in. I'm not about that. And it's like $5,000 a track or something stupid. So in those situations, they want people they can trust. Like for me, trust has been the highest piece of like value that I can bring to anything. I'm not the best engineer in the world. I don't have the best studio in the world. I don't have the best hearing in the world, but when people hire me, they know what they're going to get, and I can deliver on that reliably. And that's the thing I think that where what makes what I do so valuable and why people keep coming back is just that level of trust. So you can establish that trust with people, like you're off to the races. And if you want to get into mixing, it's like a buddy of mine taught me this a while ago. He's like, the way to feed into some of this work is not necessarily linear. Like he wanted to be a mastering engineer at this place called Disc Makers in New Jersey because they had a mastering studio and they were like pumping shit out left and right because they were also like a disc pressing plant. Like they were doing tape and CD and vinyl. So he was like, it's mastering, it's all over the place, it's constant work because they just have like people from the internet feeding them in. And he's like, I figured out that the way to get to the mastering guy was to feed tape. He's like, because like you needed basically, you're in the room with the mastering people, loading in the tapes into the reel-to-reel for them to then begin to do the actual mastering from. So you need to learn how to load tape. Like it's such a weird way of getting in, but he's like, I learned how to load tape, and then I was really fast and really competent at it. I could align the heads and everything else, and that got me then in the room to the point where then somebody got sick, and then I was literally the guy standing next to the people when they were like, well, who are we gonna bring in? And it's like, well, dude's right here. Do you know how to work all this shit? It's like, yeah, I could do it. And then he's in. So oftentimes the way in isn't necessarily direct. Like I want to learn mastering, so I want to get mastering. It's like, no, you want to learn mastering, you got to learn how to load tape. Like that doesn't line up to my head, but it totally works in the industry. So oftentimes it's like finding that vulnerability in the situation you want to get your way into. So like if you know that there are mixing engineers that are doing cool shit, send them your mixes. Or be like, yo, like, hey, I love what you're doing. Like, I know we're in the middle of COVID. I can't come to your studio and help you. But, like, if you need me to, like, load stems in and label shit, I got you. If you need me to, like, because that's the shit. And there's people in this room right now who literally I'm handing that exact work off to right now. Because it's, when you have, like, 10 projects show up, just the labeling is going to take you half a day. And then you're not working. So you need people low level to just be able to load shit in and QC shit where you're like, hey, I got a record, here it is, label everything, load it into my DAW. Great. Well, halfway through that, maybe you learn that like some of the stems are broken and you got to go back to the client. Like that's a bunch of time off my plate that I can't really afford, but somebody else could totally handle the back and forth on that. And if that person can develop trust enough to hand me things that are reliable, they start to learn the process and they can work their way in that way. Because like the studios, especially like you said, most people are working at home right now and they're getting great results. I mean, that's what the whole approach is about, is like getting great results, not in big crazy rooms with a bunch of expensive shit. Being able to do competent work almost wherever. Obviously like headphones ideally, but like speakers ideally, but if you can, headphones still. But the point is that you can find these people, you can connect with them, you can learn the ropes, and you can find those ends. And every job I've ever gotten came from me giving stuff first. It is the paying the dues. I've always been like, here's some free shit. check out what I can do. I'm here to help. And like that collateral goes so far because everybody wants something. And if you show up with a really good attitude, ready to give something, like the industry responds to that, in my experience.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I think it's pretty good advice. That's pretty solid.
That's what you did, Clint.
That's literally what I did. So, yeah.
Yep. Gotta be.
Started at the bottom. Now we're here.
I have a question about. So I recently saw a post that was about. I think it was called the Approach Pro Mode, and about getting through the approach and quote unquote being certified that you know the material.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of leading into also another question, but so I really would like to get that point, and I have been here from the beginning, but I'm running into issues where, so I've done like the ear training exercises and all the exercises, but I actually ended up with really poor test results, which kind of disappointed me, but didn't discourage me to the point where like, I'm just gonna say whatever about it. I'm constantly going through it, but what do you say like to someone who is in this boat where you're trying really hard, but you're not really seeing the test results maybe that you would see, and you're kind of feeling not as confident about what you've learned, even though maybe you feel you've learned so much, but when you go to apply it, it almost seems nothing.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
Kind of find myself in that boat. So maybe if someone could speak to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say some things, and then I think Clint, you can jump in as well. I have had multiple parts of my prehistory in this process where I felt like I was hitting a wall, and some of that just had to do with like literally the brand of headphones I had. Like I switched from these Sonys to these DTs, and it like changed my entire life. And I don't like to lean on gear like that, but specifically, if you're having a hard time with some of the ear training, and you're having a hard time like conceptualizing the processes and applying them. Ooh, where's that coming from? Is that Lansky? That was so loud.
I don't know.
Watch your mics, people.
Like change or something.
Yeah, it was like we're in a change change drawer.
You heard the change come out of my pocket?
Well, that was the change. Yeah.
Wow.
It was change.
Okay.
Clint got it. Clint nailed it.
You got what it is.
That's
What
what
it
it
is.
is. There it is. So basically, like if you're having a hard time, sometimes it can be some just basic limiting factor of your monitoring. Also, it can be the way in which you're understanding what it is you're trying to achieve. Like a lot of what's held me back over the years. Yeah, a lot of what's held me back over the years has just been like that kind of breakthrough moment when like I thought I got it and I thought I was understanding what I was going for. But then when I took another look, like later on, like I was in the shower or I'm like walking down the street or something, then it hits me like a ton of bricks, like what it is that I've been doing wrong or how it is that I've been misunderstanding the thing. So legit, like if you're at a place like that, like I would love to just sit down with you for maybe like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and like we could go like look through your sessions or something like that. And maybe because also for us as an institute, as we're building this whole thing to be a school, success stories are awesome, but if somebody's struggling, that to me is super interesting. Not like your struggle, like I'm not like taking any kind of pleasure in you having a difficult time, but we want this to be a place for everybody to be able to excel. So if you're not, if you're having a hard go and things aren't, and your test scores are coming back where it's like, wait, how is this not working? I'd love to be able to jump in and figure out where that can improve. And also, these tests, these ear training stuff that we're making is not necessarily easy. Like the lowest level stuff, that's easy, but as they go higher up, it gets more and more difficult to ones that even Clint and I have a hard time on. Just so you know, so everybody knows that like in the exercises that we're putting out there, they really do go from all the way in the beginning to all the way advanced. And that means if you're getting like 25% of it right, of all the questions in an exercise, that 25% is the beginner part. And if that is you're doing okay on, there's your A. It's just to be able to quantify you in where are you at in the continuum. Because if you're in beginner or intermediate and you're, let's say, getting like maybe 8 or 9 out of here, and then you're maybe getting 5 or 6 out of here, that's kind of where we expect you to be. And the rest of it is like developmental stuff. So we might need to change around also how the exercises are going, because if you're coming in and you're realizing that you're like, oh, you're getting your soul crush from our exercises, like that's not what we're trying to do. We would like to build you up as opposed to just like smash you and be like, what is wrong with your hearing? I don't know about you, Clint. What else you might suggest?
And to that point, so like another thing that I think is going to be really important to realize, like let me ask you first this: how long have you been doing all of this? That's something I feel like is going to be super important to know.
Yeah, that's a good question. It took me about a year. I was in this when it started, and it took me a full year to get the confidence to even start this. So I literally just started this like 2 months ago.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, like audio engineering also. So like, how long have you been kind of involved with audio?
I started producing with the Producer Dojo in the beginning of 2018.
Okay.
Okay, sick. So that basically kind of, fortunately, that falls right into the point I was going to make, which is basically that sometimes it's important to remember that there is nothing in this world that will ever beat experience. And just like Seth was saying, sometimes you can beat your head against a wall over and over again trying something, and you finally, you're not giving up, but you're temporarily like walking away long enough to let your head kind of settle over it, and then something in your brain clicks, and you have these kind of plateau, these like stair step evolutions of your experience, where out of nowhere you'll have a big burst of inspiration and a newfound understanding. And also that can come from learning things that may not be directly related to what you are currently doing. So maintaining a well-rounded approach to your education and your awareness of the physics behind what's actually happening is going to be really critical to your understanding of the concepts as they apply with regard to audio engineering specifically. Like, for example, it blew, like, one of the most difficult things I ever did in college, my entire collegiate career. The most difficult class I ever took was a class called Audio Signals and Systems. It was so difficult that like the teachers often had to kind of like go through a course to kind of like keep their teaching credentials at the university I was at. And they would always avoid that class. And this class had a reputation for being incredibly difficult. And it was a freaking elective that I took, the last elective I took before I could graduate. I took what I didn't know at the time was the most difficult class in the audio program. But I got more out of that one class than I did the entire rest of my collegiate career. And in it was things that were teaching me about how signal actually, like the physics of the waveform and the electrons moving through the wires, how digital audio is processed, how filters are created with circuits, all this kind of kooky technology related stuff that I didn't really think I needed to know at first. But then as I started learning it, all of these what seemed like different and disparate concepts started linking up like a network in my brain. And because of that, I could really start applying things, my newfound knowledge in those areas to things that I already knew, like compression and EQ and things like that. Because when you thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly, understand the sort of sciencey bits behind it, you can really express yourself more freely. And once it's kind of like moving beyond the technology. Like a lot of times, technology is a barrier at first, and sometimes that's all people ever see it as. But the more completely you can the more complete your understanding of the technology, the less inhibitive it is and prohibitive it is to your expression with it. So I would say,
and I would jump in there.
It's all going to come back from experience too. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I would jump in there. There's this road is like lifelong. So
yeah, it's not short. It's not an easy road.
Well, and ideally, like one of the best advices that I got when I started out was a buddy of mine when I was like, all right, like I want to be a producer. And he's like, all right, well, whatever you do, just don't make whole songs. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I want to make songs. He's like, don't. Like, if you start trying to make songs, it's just going to piss you off. So like, work on a snare drum for a couple hours. Like, make a cool snare. Like, try to break it down into smaller and smaller pieces as opposed to trying to do everything all at once. Because the lift is so huge and the curve is so steep that you'll hit these barriers and you'll feel like you can't do it, when in reality, like if you've just been really digging in now for the last couple of months, like, first of all, we're so far along in the amount of content that we've developed. I think there's like 200 hours or something like that in the archive now, as opposed to like at the beginning when there was just only like 8. That all of those concepts, they do add on to themselves, but you should really just like take it in pieces and let those, like, the connections in your brain grow. And then the bite-sized chunks that you're taking, they're easy wins. And that confidence factor of like, okay, like, all I need to do today is like make the baddest sub possible. Just like make my speakers rattle. Like, let's just
100%.
do that. And then if that happens, then you're like, cool, I did that in an hour. Like, I got my dub. I got my win. Now, like, I can keep going, but like that was all I set out to do today. And so if it's like, I want to be mixing and mastering and I want to be doing this, like, I want to, like, the shit I'm hearing in my head, like, I want to have that come out the speakers, like, that takes time to get there. And if you keep the confidence factor up, you'll keep the passion up.
100%. And to add on to that, if you would have told me that I would be doing any of the things that I'm doing some days now, if you would have told me that when I was at the same position that you seem to be in your journey, dude, I would have never believed that I would have been here for certain.
Full on.
Like, the music I was making at the time, like, it was garbage. I can listen back to it now and laugh. And at the time, it seemed like such a huge deal. And it is, because it's like your stepping stones that you're building upon. And then, but like in the beginning, all I wanted to do was make like Noisia bass and Excision bass and Cohen
sure.
sound bass. I wanted to make these crazy sounds. I couldn't do it to save my life. And then here we are, I don't know, a decade later or more, and now that's second nature, and it's not even like a thing, and I don't even think about it half the time. So
Sure.
you will get there. I promise you. The only thing you have to do is never give up.
Yeah, don't quit.
That's the people that survive. Yeah.
Yeah, don't quit and go
Also,
slow.
while we're on this, this is just kind of like general advice for everybody. Seth started a Facebook group a long time ago called Audio Stuffs, and that's actually where he and I got.
I got
acquainted
asked
and
about
met,
that
and,
today,
like,
by the way. My old homie was like, "What
Oh, did
happened to
you?
audio stuff?"
Love
Yeah,
that group.
totally. I was like, I hate Facebook, man.
nice.
I had to leave. Yeah, totally. Sorry to
So
interrupt.
there's yeah, you're fine. There's a mastering engineer named Bob Mack, or Bob. His nickname's Bob Mack, or Bob Mackey. How do you say his name, Seth? Is it Makioki or Makiochi?
I thought it was
Something
Makioki.
like
I thought.
that?
Yeah.
Makioki. Yeah, it's he's a British mastering engineer, and he's super dope. If you've ever listened to G Jones, you've heard Bob Mack's mastering.
Yeah.
And he had a comment on there, which I'll read to you now, which is just kind of loaded with truth. And I don't remember what post he said this in response to, but since we're on like kind of dropping these, like, just stick with it kind of motivational things, I have to bring up Bob Mack, because this truth nugget that he dropped on us one day was probably one of the most important things I'd ever heard at the time. And the quote is, "Forget mastering. Learn to mix. Invest in your monitoring, your speakers, your acoustics. Treat individual mix elements right, and it will all add up right. You don't make a cake by worrying about the icing first. You don't get the cake right by worrying about advanced baking techniques. Keep it basic, keep it simple, and keep it high quality. Forget mastering. It's bollocks. Forget multi-band compression. Forget multi-anything. Forget anything except 1, basic EQ, 2, basic compression, and 3, space, be it reverb, delay, pan, or width. Make sounds that sound good and fit them together. Make tunes that make people want to punch things. And above all, remember this. All audio engineering is fixing something that should have been gotten right earlier in the process. Get it right and get it done."
Dope.
I was like, holy
Dope.
crap, Bob Mack coming in hot with the freaking truth.
When was that comment from?
That was a while ago. I'm talking probably 2 years ago now.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't have the date in the screenshot of the comment. I just have that screenshot saved to.
That was a cool group.
Bob
That's kind of what we're trying to do here, is just like pull that same vibe over this way, where it's just like people trying to help each other, having different
100%.
experiences. Because the bigger your network is, like, that's another thing. Is like, it is who you know. And the bigger your network is, the more you'll find people who are in the same exact boat as you, or who've already solved the same problem as you, or who are encountering the same issues that you are, and you can solve them together. My girlfriend right now, she's becoming a software engineer, and it's like, every step of the way you find that there's somebody else that you need to integrate with, who does something that you want to either learn or who will augment whatever you're trying to do, because with them, they're all compartmentalized. And that's exactly the same way that audio is. It's like you have your producers, you have your engineers, you have your artists, you have your vocalists, you have your top liners, you have your writers. Like, it's all compartmentalized and specialized. And the more you have a network and the more those people come together, the better off and the better the stuff that you make. And a lot of these like really amazing groups or like cultural phenomenons all came out of just people getting together who were like-minded. Like, there wasn't a big budget, there wasn't a lot of money, there wasn't even like that they would do something life-changing or world-changing. It was just people with like passion and ideas and like-minded kind of goal set, So
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I really
Stay
appreciate you guys
motivated.
talking about that. That's been something that's been bugging me
Yeah.
for a while, and I've kind of been timid about signing up for student advisor sessions because I feel like sometimes I don't have something that's good enough to even bring to the table. So I appreciate you talking about this.
No, but that's
Yeah,
exactly
dude,
what the student
nonsense.
advisors.
Everything you bring
That's
is
what they're
good.
for. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what the
Yeah.
student advisor sessions are for. Like, why we created the opportunity to be able to say, "Hey, here's where I'm at. What do I need?" That's exactly what those things are for. So it's like, of course, like if you're like, I have a record I want to put out, like, sure, like come in, like talk with Clint, set it up, and he'll help you get the record done. But that issue, that problem that you're solving at that point, that you're like, I need some advice on, is as equally an important problem as I'm really having a hard time on even knowing where to start. Like I'm having a hard time even knowing where my hard time is. Like the biggest thing that we
Yeah.
do here at the approach is like being able to understand the problems so you can fix them. If you don't know where your problems are, you're lost. You're just treading water at that point. So conceptually, it's so important to be able to have eyes and ears. It's just situational awareness. Like, you can't fix what you don't know exists. So, not knowing where you're at, it's an exact reason to kind of come in. So I say do one, and I bet you'll come out of that with a, and that was literally why we invented them. I was like, what we need for, especially as we get to the point where we're at right now, it's like where new students come on, and there's a fucking mountain of video content in the archive. You're like, all right, like, where do I start? Like, what do I,
Yeah.
where's, is it linear? Do I just go through or like, I'm a hip hop producer. Like, is there anything I should like go right towards right away that kind of deals with things I'm going to encounter? Or I'm a vocalist. Like, what do I need to look for in here? Or I want to be a dialogue editor. Where should I go to learn more about those kinds of things? Like, there's so much content in there. It's like, that's exactly what the student advisor sessions are for, so that you can get up with people who know the content, know the school, and then can do an assessment of where you're at, and then point you towards like, here's things you can work on right away. And then you kind of have those checks and balances, so that when you have one set up, you have multiple sessions in that, so that you come through and you don't just be like, hey, learn this shit, goodbye. But it's like, okay, we've got an assessment, we know where you're at. You should probably check out these things, and you should definitely be working on this, and then make it real bite-sized. And then we'll come back a couple weeks, second session, we'll see how that plan works. And then if that's working, like, great. But if it's not working, well, then we'll adjust the plan. And then you have another session to kind of, again, further that, like, is it working? Are you getting the gains or not? Because that's like the whole concept of this is like, we don't just want to like take your money and then throw you to the video wolves. It's like, great, into the joy of the archive, good luck. Like, it's like, the whole idea of this is like, if this helps me and then it helped Clint, it can help everybody else. And if it gets me work, it can get you work. And I really don't believe, like, not to say that we aren't special people, but I just don't have that. I'm like, it's all of this is like skill based. Like, I don't know if you watch this, like, there's this great art documentary about like the largest fraudulent art scheme ever on Netflix. And I just watched that shit last night, and it just furthers this exact point. where these like high-end art people in New York were like pumping out fakes, like 80 million worth of fucking fake art, and all the people they were showing it to, who were these like supposed experts, were all like, oh yes, it's beautiful, and all of them put their name on that shit, and it all came back as like nonsense. And you're like, so many of the people that are at the top of their game are just making it up, and they just ended up in that spot, and they want you to think that you can't get there, because if you realized that they were just making it up, all of you would have their same exact positions. We would all be in those same spots. So they want that hierarchy in your mind so that you don't push towards that goal, that you're like, oh, I'll never make it. It's not for me. Oh, I don't have the ears. Oh, I don't have the training. It's like, this is shit you can learn to do, and we believe that. So that's, I say, take advantage of the system and get your gains, because I think it's possible. And it's a lot of shit, so you got to just go slow.
It is a lot of stuff to learn.
Yeah.
I'll be signing up. Thank you.
Do it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. That's my suggestion. What else we got? What else? What are the questions we got? This room is getting bigger. I like it.
Yeah, it is.
I'm going to table myself, but I have further questions if no one else has anything to ask.
Let's give it up to the room, and then if nobody wants to peek their nose out, we'll keep going.
I guess it's sort of in the same vein as what we've been talking about lately. But you mentioned the art dealer things and the people that are just faking it on top. Yep. I've been doing like audio recording, mixing, stuff like that for round about a decade now, and I see people that have started recently, and I've heard their mixes and stuff, and they're decent, but I don't want to rag on anyone, but like, they're getting hella clients just based on like how they're portraying themselves or their skills online. And I guess I fall into the trap of like not wanting to like brag about my skills or put them out there. How do you find like a happy medium in, you know, showcasing your skills in a way that doesn't seem like you're like bragging or whatever, but also like, you know, maintaining like whatever. I don't know. I guess my thing is like, how should you portray yourself to the public or on social media or stuff like that to get hits, get clients, things like that?
I mean, I think like, you know, there's like big ego shit, and then there's like being proud of the stuff that you do. And the more that you do work with that you're proud of, and you share that work, I mean, it was this like there's these two books that came out that are fantastic, which is, one's called Steal Like an Artist, and the other one is called Show Your Work. And both of them are amazing when it comes to this kind of world. But like, you can't work in a bubble, like, unless you want to be like Van Gogh and you want to just paint in a closet and then die like a crippling old death, and then have people figure out your shit that you were brilliant later on. But ideally, you want people to recognize you, and recognition comes with putting your shit out there and being proud about that. I think that there is a line, like, you know, like, I wouldn't go rent like a Rolls Royce and stand in front of that shit and like pull like a Khaled like move, be like, yeah, fucking hit me up for your mixes, and people are like, damn, he's balling. But like, there is a facet of that exists on the internet. That's what I mean, is like, you could totally just, you could see a Lambo on the street and just like get your homie to like take a picture of you in front of that and do that and get clients that way. Like, I knew an engineer that was mixing Britney Spears shit just because he like would worm his way onto the red carpet and have another homie take photos of him with these people. And you could see like, they would like, they got it, the timing down where like they would get the shot before the artist realized he was standing next to them. So like, you get this shot where they seem like they're okay, but the next shot they're like, what the fuck? Like, they're looking at this dude like, who's this guy? But like, he had enough of those photos that he just would put into his Instagram that he started getting work, and he got big clients like that. And every time he would drop the ball and he would fuck it up because he wasn't good enough to actually do the work. He just like smarmed his way in there. But there's a facet of that like, there is a little bit of performativeness with the whole thing. And, first of all, you're really only competing with yourself in the whole game. Like, I know that we want to look at, like, these other people are doing these things and I want those gigs or whatever. But truth be told, if you can get out of your own head enough and keep the focus and grow your skills and demonstrate those, you will get the work because you will be qualified to do that stuff. Like, that's just how it goes. And where
100%.
I'm at in the world that I'm in, there's not a lot of people. It's not a big world. It's actually like when you get up into the majors, it's niche. I know it doesn't seem like it's niche, but it totally is. There's like maybe 8 people who do all of the shit. And that's part of, obviously, they have the pedigree, they have the experience, they know what the work is like, they can output into the pipeline normally, you don't have to onboard them, and that's how they're able to command those gains. But like I just said before, like artists that I work with sometimes hate working with those people because they either force the artist out of their comfort zone, they do all kinds of shit, or they just phone it in, or they have like assistants mixing it, and then they're still charging for the dude's name even though the dude's never been in the room. So conceptually, like, there's just a little bit of the game you've got to play. It comes down to what you're comfortable with showing and being proud of that. And so if you are working with bands, like you've been in the business, you probably know some people that like working with you. You're probably doing good work to have them showcase you. Like, one of the things that I love about some of the labels that I'm working with right now is when the album drops, I get tagged in their posts.
Yeah, that's really dope.
And then I circle around and re-tag them, even though they don't need me pushing the record. Like, I'm not going to bring mad plays to the record from my whatever fucking followers. Like, I don't have a lot of followers. But also, that's not been my game. My game's been impressing the people in the business who I need to impress. And I've done everything. I don't have a website. Everything in my prehistory is word of mouth. People learn about what I do, and then they hear that from a client. And that's been the other thing, is that I've embedded myself with people that I'm like, yo, like, here's a band coming up that I think is dope, and I'm just going to offer to do, a single of theirs. Just be like, yo, I think you guys are dope. I think you're on your come up. Before you blow up, I want to do a single of yours for free. Like, no band is going to say no to that. They're going to be like, hell yeah, let's go. Especially if they're like broke on their come up. Like, they don't have a big deal yet. So then when they blow up, they're like, yo, that dude was awesome and it sounded amazing. And especially if, like, potentially some of the tracks that you did with them are some of the ones that go up, like, that's where you start to get that recognition. And then they're like, yo, bring this guy in, bring this lady in, like, have them help us with this next part of the lift. And that's how it's gone for me since the get. So it's obviously you can't just do everything for free, but you could leverage a little bit of that in there, a little bit of that give back, a little bit of that, like, goodwill and good nature towards other people, and that sharing of showing the work, where it's like somebody, like, if a band does, that's another thing. It's like, also, if you're working with a bunch of bands and they're never tagging you on the releases, or you're not getting credit, like, that's the wrong people to work with. Like, it should be everybody lifting each other up, because, like, many hands make light the work, right? So.
Dope. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And it's, by the way, everybody, actually, like, it took me like 7 years of grinding away for free. Like, I was eating ramen every day. I was eating, like, chips and salsa for meals. I was, like, making a Subway sandwich go for like 2 days, like, for a long time before I ever got any recognition. So it is a difficult business to be in, but just know that, like, just because people might not be recognizing you, that does not mean you don't have something to contribute and that you're not brilliant. Like,
no, that's great advice. I feel like a lot of it too, like, my girl's like a visual artist and she just started like a page and that shit's popping. Like, I feel like people with music nowadays, since it's all streaming, like, it's not a physical thing that you have in your hand, it's not like a vinyl insert or a CD insert with the lyrics and stuff. So, like, it's nice to have that encouragement with all that.
Yeah, and just, like, the more social that you can get, the more that you're like, I'm on this project, and I'm on this project, and I'm on this project. And also, like, don't be afraid to work down. Like, I know it sometimes can be, like, a negative thing, but, like, if you've worked yourself up to, like, head engineer, but you're like, I'm boxed into country or something, or you're boxed into like folk. I don't know. Maybe you got into a situation where you're like, I'm the head, but I'm not getting the clientele that I want. You can assistant. You can find somebody who might be doing the thing that you want, like the homies of yours that are getting these big clients. You're just like, they're blowing up, and I don't know how they're blowing up or whatever. Go assist for them. And then beat them on like the friend level. Like just be a nicer person that's like less flashy. And they're like, yo, I love this dude. Or like, that's the guy that got the vocals. Like I know a homie of mine that got like hella work in hip hop just by being early to sessions, staying late, and just being really nice. Like they were like, Hit Boy was like, this dude, like he got fired by Kanye actually. Kanye fired him for wearing a sweatshirt. And then Hit Boy like hired him because of that. He's like, oh yeah, this dude's cool. He's wearing my shit. Let's go. Like it's a weird business. It really does come down to like, do people like you? Like, because if they do, then they're going to want to be, because all this stuff, like Clint knows, like we spend 20 hours a day sometimes on shit. And if you don't like that person that you're with, especially if things are stressful, like it's not going to keep happening. Like people are going to quit.
Totally.
So you got to like the work and you got to like the people, because these situations get really stressful. So I've been able to get gigs just because people like me. Like, I think is the friend move.
That question that came in like about the not the most recent question, but the one before that reminded me of an anecdote, like a story that I have of. I'm not gonna say who it was.
Yeah, no
just to
names.
save face for them, of course. And I watched this producer who I went to a friend's house in a neighboring city once, and I walk in, and at that time I think I just graduated high school or something, and was in college, and people knew that I liked Ableton and was into the music thing, and one of my friends introduces me to his friend who was making music in Ableton on his laptop when I walked in, and said, "Oh, yo, Dave, this is Clint." I'm gonna say Dave, but I want to say anything else. But this is like, "Oh, Dave, this is Clint. He makes music. He's a genius. Whatever." He was like really pumping me up, and he's like, the guy was like, "Yeah, cool. You make music?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Cool." I was like, "Can you hear what you're working on?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." And the person hits play, and I'm not even joking. It was like that meme where all the faders are in the red. Like just everything was in the red, and everything was crushed and distorted, and it was garbage. And I said, whoa, and I hit space bar. I just said, hang on a second, and I turned everything down, and I hit play, and they said, whoa, it sounds better. And I said, yeah, it does. So it was this moment, and then that person that shall remain only known as Dave was like 2 years later on like an international tour of their music, remixing artists that I had looked up to for years, because day in and day out they just stuck with it, and eventually they just quote unquote faked it till they made it, so to speak, and now they're a huge name. I can't say who, but I really wish I could, because it's a hilarious story. I tell it to everybody who knows this person. Our mutual friends, they laugh about it. They're like, "Yeah, now look at where they're at."
Well, to that end,
it's hilarious.
I had a homie come by when I first got into this. Like I said, I bought some cheap recording equipment, and he came by my spot. The dude who figured out the tape running into disc makers, he came by my spot, and I was like, "Yeah, just check out my gear, man. It's super cool." And he's like, "You like hardwired all your effects?" And I'm like, "Yeah, vocal mic to the effects to the desk." And he's like, and I had bought this Mackie console that had like a million fucking auxiliaries. Like I had like, I think 16 auxiliaries per channel, because it's a live console. So you have like all your monitor sends, and you have like all your effects sends, and like everything you would need for live. Well, I didn't know. I was like, this is a weird EQ. It doesn't do anything. Like all these 16 auxiliaries. I was like, I don't know. I'll figure that out someday. He's like, you should really use your auxiliaries, man. You have so many available. Like, oops. Like, yeah. So, yeah, we all start somewhere for sure.
Everybody starts somewhere for sure.
Yeah. Well, and even like we just did this crazy Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak interview press junket for Warner, or for Atlantic, excuse me. And we was all through Zoom. Like they hired me to run a Zoom call. I was like, you guys don't, like, nobody has a phone? Like, what is going on here? Like, but they don't. Like, and they just need somebody they can trust to literally, like, be in a text chat with people who are distributed over America and then click Zoom links. And obviously, and bring the camera in and bring the computer in and make sure the audio is good and everything else. But, like, yeah, it's just Zoom, you know? Like, and if I didn't know the people that I knew, I wouldn't even know that gig existed. You just be so all the time that shit comes up. It just comes down to like who you know and whether or not you're willing to just keep going.
Totally. Actually, what's his name? LS Dream. I was hanging out with LS Dream when he was in
yeah.
Nashville once. We have some mutual friends, and he told me this. He just looked at me square in the face. I was asking him for advice once, and he said he just looked me straight in the face, and he goes, "Nothing in this world is more important than your relationships with other human beings."
Yep.
And I just froze because it was such a, when he said that in the context of our conversation, everything didn't matter that I'd set up to that point. Because he was right. Nothing is more important than your relationships with other human beings.
Totally.
Have good friends, be cool to people, and good things can happen for sure.
Totally.
Trauma words in the chat. He said Brills? Yeah, Brills.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Brills.
Formerly known as Brills.
LS Dream shit is so good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love his performances are something extraordinary too, because he plays a lot of music that a lot, you know, I've been to a lot of shows, especially living in Nashville, and there's a kind of a decent electronic music scene here, at least there was pre-COVID. And there's you know, a lot of people are, it's tempting, and I get it, to play just the most banging tunes you've got because you've got, you know, your time in the spotlight and that's what you want to impress people. I get it. And so oftentimes with the you know, increasing aggressiveness of electronic music over the past decade, people are just slapping the hardest music possible.
Sure.
And I love everything about LS Dream because of the fact that every time I've ever seen him play, he doesn't do that. He plays good vibes, and sometimes it's really soft music, but everybody is loving it. Like it's like the atmosphere changes from this like egotistical, like I'm gonna go louder and harder than you mentality to like I'm gonna create a good vibe, and like this whole imagery is like really really uplifting because it's all about colors and this whole theme, and yeah. So if you don't listen to LS Dream, this is your big hint. Go check out LS Dream. Really cool music.
Yeah, just different shit.
Really cool human being.
Which is nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as that Eternal Now track dropped, like last year, whenever it was, I was an instant fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one too.
He played Massive Attack's was it Rising Sun? No, which one is not Rising Sun. It's what was the I'm embarrassed because Massive Attack's one of my favorite bands. Oh, Teardrop. He played Teardrop by Massive Attack, and he just like played most of the song in a crowded room with everybody that was recently, you know, the previous DJ just made everybody rage and sweat, and now all of a sudden they're just vibing out to Massive Attack. That made my night. Yeah.
As we just ramble
How many people
through
we have in
questions.
here right now? 1,
16.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I have a
7,
question.
8, 9. Okay, 16.
Yeah, what you got?
What's up?
I was just wondering if you could, you don't have to get too detailed, but if you could describe a little bit about your process, how you work remotely with each other, like, you know, when you're working on a basic mastering project.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it. Clint, do you want to, because Clint starts it. Do you want to start, Clint? Or actually, I start it. Wait, I'll start. I'll start.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
start because
you
I
s- you
technically
start it, yeah.
but then you go from there and then I come back in. I go and meet generally with the clients. I try and meet with them either in person or at this point like through FaceTime or TeamView. Depending on the client's budget and the turnaround times and everything else, I really like integrating everything that they have into the studio. So I've actually got I've got a Mac Pro over here, and I've got a Hackintosh over here, and I've got a laptop over here, and I've got a PC over here. And so that allows us to sort of, whatever their environment is, whatever DAW they're using, it allows us to sort of get into their head with their plugins and then integrate the pipeline into their process. Because most of the time when records are getting finished, often there's a lot of back and forth on things. Like they're literally reorganizing, rearranging. Oh, we got a new verse in there. We got a feature, blah, blah, blah. Like that last minute thing, whatever. It's just like if I were to get them to stem it out, first of all, if I were to ask a producer or an artist to like stem something down, literally almost 100% of the time it comes out wrong. Or it comes out with like shit baked in. Like I've gotten like and again, I'm not naming names, but from professional motherfuckers, I've gotten like cymbals in the vocal track. And you're like, did you even listen to the things you sent us? Like you're like, I can't, like I got a crash cymbal coming in on this dude's voice over and over again. Like I just can't, I gotta have 2 pieces, please. So I just try to like clone their environment. I'm like, I want to know what plugins you're using on the thing. I want to know which versions they are. And then we'll build like a little virtual machine that is basically the client's rig. And then that is synced with them on Dropbox. And then we get all the projects in there. And so now they can open the projects in their environment and work and make changes. And that immediately uploads the project file to us. And then we're able to then open that same project file and pull parts out. And once that's built and set up, that's when Clint kind of comes. And actually, Clint helps set that up and build it. But then that's when Clint comes in.
Yeah. And specifically with regards to mastering and like how Seth and I often communicate, to kind of go for like real basics here. We talk a lot via Slack. Like we have like a team Slack. We utilize the crap out of Dropbox. We have a shared Dropbox that is, I don't know how many gigs.
300
terabytes, rather. Probably.
Yeah.
300 gigs.
It's 300
so
on there right now, but we pull it
lot.
off a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. We switch it over. Like the Chase Atlantic record was, I don't know how many 100 gigs.
250, I think, on its own.
Was it?
Yeah, just think about 250 gigs.
Yeah, so we use Dropbox. We talk a lot via Slack, emails for sort of things that need to be found quickly via searching, like the subject and whatnot. But so we're doing a lot of things with that, really leaning along that quite a bit. And so like for the records kind of stuff, Seth will kind of go through everything he just mentioned, and then like for the Chase Atlantic record, he would hand it off to me. And actually, we used virtual machines a lot for that one because it was more simple and less time consuming at first in certain scenarios to like get me into his computer in LA virtually to print stems or to make changes or do printouts virtually on his machine, as opposed to trying to acquire the assets on my machines and make everything match. We're talking down to like the plugin version number has to match, and all this sort of stuff has to be kind of like exact. Otherwise, there's so much room for error that oftentimes software will kind of fuck you up if you're not careful. And I'm still learning the lesson every single day. It seems that we have to just like everything has to be just rock solid. Nothing can really change because it is so like the necessity is so high for consistency and repeatability that like you can't really just install things freely. So we'll often like I was tunneling into his computer via remote desktop or something and to do work and print them out into the Dropbox. And then if I needed to make any edits, like for the example, let's take Chase Atlantic. The projects and all the plugins and everything would live like in a Logic session on his computers in LA. I would come in, open that via remote desktop, open that up, get out whatever we needed to get out. That goes up on Dropbox. I then come onto my local machines and I take those assets, be it stems or whatever, put that into Ableton on my machine, and then set it up in we have kind of like a standardized format, and then
Premix,
save that, premixed kind of thing, and then I send that back to Seth, and we just put it right back on Dropbox, and we always version up. Like everything we do is always going to like every time we open a session, practically we version up so that we always have this kind of like timeline of project files we can kind of jump between if we need to go back or if something gets borked or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Because something
and then Seth will
inevitably
take over
breaks.
from there and always, yeah,
yeah.
something always breaks. So
Yeah.
that's does that answer your question?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Cool.
it's pretty convoluted in and then when I was working with the A&R and the bands to finalize the records, I was doing the listen to situation, the same thing that we're doing here with you all. Like I just had A&R on listen to, and I had the band on listen to, and then I had them on FaceTime over here so we could like communicate. And then I basically had like, because I had, and that was the weirdest shit, like running notes with like one headphone. Because at that point, like I had to hear the iPad on FaceTime. I hadn't built the routing system that we have now. So now when we do it again, I'll probably use Zoom and I'll be able to hear everybody just out of the headphones or out of the monitors. But at that time, it was just FaceTime. And so I was like making vocal changes with like one headphone in while they would talk. So as soon as I started working, they would just start talking, which is like also the thing you have to deal with in the fucking studio. It drives me nuts is when you have like, you know, like when you're actually running a record, the band will come and then the band's friends will come and then the band's friends will come and then the label will come and then the label's friends will come and then you have like 18 people in the room like having like I've literally like yelled at people on a Nintendo DS. You're just like, yo, like, can you play FIFA like a little quieter on headphones? Like, yeah, or just like on headphones. Like, I just put your earbuds in, man. It's cool. Like, I'm just trying to like literally work. But all in, actually, I'm pretty happy with the way the technology works. Like, there's some bottlenecks in the things that we just described. It is difficult for Clint to, like, in a stemming scenario, in muting and like when you're trying to bring assets out, it's not that hard. It is slow, but like you can use it. But like that's why Clint would need to like mine, and why we had the machines local was just also like due to plugins and shit. Like there's like for that last record, there was a lot of shit we had to do on iLock, and then I needed those iLocks here, and then also Clint needed those iLocks, and I wrote to the companies, and they're like, yeah, if you need another license, buy another license, and I'm like, I'm gonna spend 5 G's just on auto-tune for this record. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So that's why we set it up on one machine where we were like, okay, we've got the client stuff here. We know this works with the client shit. We can save and reopen. We're not borking it. And then they can stem out. Clint can stem out of that onto the Dropbox and then compile on his local machine. And then we can dump, that's just automatically in the Dropbox. And then we can just start versioning up from there. And then if we need to get to a point where I'm like, okay, Clint, like, I've got this kind of rough mix going. Can you see about flushing this out left to right? Or like we've got some automation in here. I need that to kind of carry on. Or like a lot of the times we had stuff that was baked in where it's like there's the band like either made a loop in the past or used a loop, and that loop and then the rest of their production was a little bit wonky. And I was like, I can't EQ, like I need to get, like I need to invert the phase of the kicks in this loop, but I can't invert the phase of the snares in the loop. So then it was like, okay, Clint, I need you to go in and micro edit like a fucking stem. Yeah. And I remember that when I was like, you're like, wait, how much of this do I have to do? I was like, the entire song, I need every 16th note broken out into different tracks. Which literally like,
it was challenging.
Once that happened, then it was, then literally the move after that was me just going like, boop. Like I literally just moved these two stems that we made like 2 milliseconds forward and another 4 milliseconds back. But like to get there was like 4 hours of editing.
Death?
That was for Beauty and Death. Yeah.
Was that for Beauty and Death? Yeah. Everybody go check that out. Check that record out if you want.
Beauty and Death.
The groove of the.
Yeah, and the drums. Yeah.
Yeah, the groove and the drums.
Yeah, the original was like their version it's really good, but they were just the pocket was like they were the band, the vocals and the music and the percussion were like bridging the gap between two pockets. So one of the things, like at least being an engineer that has production experience and then having the band's trust, was I went back to the band in that scenario and I was like, and the A&R, and I was like, hey, like, the pocket here feels a little wonky. Like, do you guys mind if I do an edit? And they're like, oh yeah, sure, fuck it, who cares? Like, whatever. I was like, yeah, we can go back. I won't do destructive. Like, we can easily go back. But once we did that, they were like, oh, this is great. But of course, like, the bands, that's so much time. Like, they're not even going to think to do, they don't even know that they could do that. You're like, oh yeah, you can take the little loop and just chop every 16th note and put it on its own channel. And then like, then just shuffle everything around a little bit. So like the whole thing kind of takes shape. We had the same problem with like literally the same process with like a Gucci Mane and Rick Ross joint, where the original was like, there was just some weird swing in the original. And then when Gucci and Rick tracked on it, they literally, like, you can hear in the rough thing that we got from the producer, like just like the rough mix, there was this hi-hat in there, like just this steady ass hat. It was super loud. And then when we got all the stems, that hat did not exist. And I was asking them, like, I was like, yo, what's the deal with that hat? And they're like, yo, they were so lost on the groove of this when they were recording it that they just added in this hat in Pro Tools. So like Gucci and Rick could track. And then so we that was like a fucking puzzle. Like, so we had to fix the song. And then because the rappers rapped to like a different pocket, we had to fix them without because like also with Gucci's, like, Gucci's not a technical rapper. So like editing Gucci Mane, like, you have to be really careful not to make it too perfect, because if you make Gucci Mane perfect, he doesn't sound like Gucci Mane anymore. So you have to like leave him a little soft on the timing. And that took that just fixing that shit, I think that was like 30 days of work or something. That was a lot. Anyways, that's the process. It's a lot of like figuring it out and breaking it down, and having the flexibility and not having to go back to the band for anything. Like, the thing that I love doing with clients is to make sure that, like, when they hand something off to us, that's kind of it. And like, they get it back as like a master, and we don't need to ask for much more. Also, because if they're in the middle of a record rollout, they're doing press tour or they're doing whatever, and it's just like, the less you can ask of them and the more you can deliver, the better. And so the more we just have that level of access, then if we need to make changes or pull shit apart, or like at one point, I think we were even in that Chase Atlantic record and we had to go backwards to like undo vocal stuff, where we're like, oh shit, we were printing with all these other things. We've got to undo that. Like, we didn't, like, that would have been a bad ask to go back to the band and be like, hey, so remember all that time you spent stemming the vocals? Okay, well, I need everything you did now, again, different. They'd been like, what? So those kinds of things help also insulate us from going back to them and them being like, wait, we just all spent all that time. And it's like, no, don't worry about it. Like, it's not going to eat out the budget. Like, we'll eat the time that we lost. But we do need these things because we're realizing we've hit this wall. You know, it's too much like printed ambience.
So if you don't like own the plugin that is used in a session, then are you purchasing license for it? Like, if a project comes in,
yeah, it's just part of the budget. Yeah, we'll just include that in there. So we have to grab something like the auto tunes and stuff like that. Like the first time I've needed auto tune was with the Chase Atlantic thing, but by getting the budget to be able to do that, it allows me to sort of move my way into that world. So,
and then also, lastly, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, just also we've like over so much of my work in this business, I've developed quite a library of plugins. So oftentimes I have the plugin already that they're using. It's the version number that's kind of hard to get sometimes, like which version they have, but oftentimes I've got it. Everything's pretty well. It's like people are using UAD or Softtube or FabFilter or, you know, like or Isotope, or like everybody's pretty much like, it's rare when you hear somebody mention a plugin that you've never heard of before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like when you say version number, do you mean like the macro version, or like 1.0.7, like the small numbered version?
All the way down until it terminates. Yeah. 0.45, like the whole thing. Because like we found that like Clint and I had like a FabFilter offset at one point, and I think Clint had like 2.02 and I had like 2.3. And when Clint could open the session and make changes, but then if I opened the session after Clint, everything was neutralized. you will find that like
and
that's
vice versa. That did,
yeah,
did
yeah,
that
yeah,
with,
yeah,
we did that
yeah.
with Isotope too. Yeah.
Yeah, it will ruin your day, like if you don't have the exact same version number. So now we have this spreadsheet which was like the spreadsheet of doom, of like every plugin that exists officially on the machines that we have, its state, whether or not it works or not, what if it's VST or audio unit or VST3, and what version number it is.
Yeah,
like
that was
just
that
to
was
be
a,
able to
that was
be
a
like
laborious week.
Yeah, but again, it's a week of time we spent on that shit. But that's also the other part about like this work is that there's back end shit. Like I used to think that I would like get done with my work and then I would go home. But like what I realize is like I get done and then I go online and I start learning about new tools. I'm like, all right, like every 6 months, I'm like, okay, take like a couple nights after work and just start Googling new plugins and just see what they do and see if you might want to cop them or if you might at least get the demos, learn about why they're here or who's using them, who came out in the press, who's in the little thing at the bottom that says they love this thing. Like, are any of those people either associated with people you want to work with or people you have been working with or people you like the work of? If so, chances are you might want to know about that tool so that you're not blindsided later on. So you got like, because without the research part, you don't stay on top of your game. Like you're still using older stuff or you're not aware of new techniques or new tools. And so the longer you just stay working, the more you kind of don't do research. You just like, it's just this game of like, it's like fighters that fight, but then the rest of the time is training, you know? It's that same sort of thing where you're like, yeah, the game is engineering, but like outside of that, like I still have my push-ups I have to do. Like we are all on that kind of boat, you know?
Yeah, totally. I find myself like, because I have quite a collection too, and it almost becomes like a full-time thing just to keep everything updated all the time. And
Oh yeah.
it's just
Oh yeah.
I couldn't imagine, like, so will you keep multiple versions of the same plugin within the same system, or do you just choose one and pick it, or do you delete and move them out as is needed with whatever you're working on?
I hold all of the installers, and then I have I will image the system we used to make the record, so that if I have to come back to that at some point, I can. And that's the whole system, OS, everything, logins, settings, the whole deal. So I can just put that back on a disk and log in and go if I have to. But otherwise, then I'll just swap everything out like as needed. Like if I'm like, okay, we got to get rid of this version, get rid of that. We got to upload this version, do that. But the installers are the thing that I hold on to, which now like OS X is like, hey, as soon as you're done with that installer, you want me to throw that to the trash? I'm like, absolutely not, because this is my key to like being able to get back later. So I just have a cache of all the installers, and then I've got the images of the disks. So if I have to go back to like, and I have older computers. That's another thing. Like I am like a little bit of a collector of machines. So I've got like a 2012 Mac Pro that I can put like all the way down to like Tiger if I wanted to, an Ableton 8. They're like, okay, let's go all the way back to prehistory days and work on like Ableton 7 in 32-bit. If we have to.
You just reminded me, Seth.
Yeah.
Somebody did the video idea that I had, which is to install as many versions of Ableton as possible. Like go back to Ableton version 1.
Mhm.
Somebody made a YouTube video about that. I think it might have been like, it's not Joshua Casper. It was I don't think. It was
It's hilarious.
Julian
Yeah, I
Gray, I
saw
think, or
that.
something like that. Or
Yeah, it's Julian
somebody
Gray.
did that Julian Gray. Yeah, like I that was my video idea, and I didn't get
Should
to
have
do
done
it
it.
for somebody
Yo,
else.
we came up with a great video
know.
last night with with Henry Strange, where we want to make the toilet paper studio. Because we were talking
Okay.
about it, and we were like, I'm pretty sure that if you used toilet paper rolls, you'd get a pretty non-environmental room. And if you just stacked toilet paper rolls floor to ceiling and put them on the ceiling as well, that you'd have a pretty non-environmental space. And then if you soffit mounted your speakers in the toilet paper, I'm just saying.
That would be a viral video no matter what. That would be a viral
100%.
video.
Yeah. 100%. I
It
don't
would
know
be
how
worth
good of
it
a
to do
studio
it
it
just to
is.
do it.
But yes,
Yeah.
especially if
'cause
all the rack
low
enclosures are made of toilet
frequencies-
paper.
Oh God, that would be hilarious.
Well, no, but you could stack
Oh
the
my
toilet paper.
gosh.
You could make it doesn't not one roll deep. You could go like 6 rolls, 8 rolls,
no,
10
deep.
rolls deep.
Well, so the problem is the density, and it's for anybody who is into acoustics. Here's a tip. It has to do with what's called the gas flow resistivity and the
Sure.
ability of air to permeate through it. So because those are so tightly wound, air won't be able to permeate through it, and so it'll actually act like a reflector
Really?
at certain frequencies.
Toilet paper studio will
Yeah.
be reflective.
What if you TP'd the
At
room?
lower frequencies, yeah.
Yeah, okay, what if we break up the
Just
So,
TP
okay,
the whole
So what if we
room.
break up the toilet paper? We just got to like shred the toilet paper.
Okay,
then, is
so
what you're saying.
yeah, that would be cool. You would to do that, you would have to like if you hung like long sheets of toilet paper from the ceiling, you would have to go like probably 10,000 or more layers deep.
Let's go.
But to make like 3-4 feet thick, but it probably would work.
Let's go. So we'll
At
do
that
the
point.
bass traps at the back with toilet paper strips, and then we'll do all the rest
If
of
I
the
become
acoustics.
when I become a billionaire, Seth, we're doing this.
Okay.
Like,
I'm
I'm
just
buying a
saying-
warehouse
need
just to do
the
this.
sound propagating.
Also a massive fire hazard.
Oh yeah, you're gonna burn. It's
Oh,
definitely a
totally.
problem.
Or a major insurance claim.
there you go.
Depending how you look at it.
Yeah, totally. As long as you're outside of the building.
No, nobody would ever insure that. Yeah, nobody would
No.
insure that. But
Yeah, definitely not.
they would never. They would be like, "Well, you did what? And you let somebody smoke in here?" Like,
Totally.
it'd be so funny. The toilet paper studio.
Toilet paper studio. Well, because we spent so much money on
Gosh.
acoustics that I was like, dude, we could go to Costco and cop like 2 pallets of toilet paper and have it done. I just feel like it's unused potential.
It would do some. It would honestly be better than nothing. So it's not the
Dang.
worst idea.
Yellow.
No, it is not. It's
I
good.
actually was doing some calculations the other day for a friend who's building a new studio, and
Yellow.
we determined that you can build like a 2x2x8 soffit super chunk corner trap for something like $40. I'm talking like a really
What?
effective absorber for like $40. Yeah, if you do it with like if you can find like R30 attic insulation and you
Ooh.
build the frame out of MDF and you do it yourself, you can have super effective, super cheap panels. Like they're not that expensive to build. If you want, the fabric is actually the most important, or not the most important, but the most expensive bit. Yeah. Getting good acoustically transparent fabric, because you're always going to want to go with one of the was it Guilfords of Maine? You're always going to want to go with that, just because they have nice colors, and everything else is going to be like plain burlap.
I love that Guilfords
hang on,
of
wait,
Maine has
actually,
become
if
the acoustic
anybody
fabric.
is watching, totally, they have an entire line that's dedicated to acoustics. In fact, if
Drop it
anybody's
on the
watching
screen.
the
I'll
Vimeo
drop
link,
it
check
in.
this
I'll drop
out.
it in. Yeah,
hang
go
on.
for it.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we got
If
you, John.
if you can see me, hang on. No, if they can see me, I've got the sampler in my hands right
They
now.
can.
of
I'll throw
Guilford's
you
of
I actually
Maine's,
cannot see the video for
yeah.
some reason.
You got to go to the Vimeo link if you want to see the video. The Vimeo link is in the chat, but watch out if you have the Vimeo link on, because you'll have the audio from the Vimeo link and you'll have the audio from Discord. And
Right.
it'll,
No, it's just
so you
it
still
says
have-
like
I'm
not
displaying it
allowed,
upside down.
unauthorized.
Huh?
Oh, really?
The Vimeo link is
Hang on.
unauthorized? It's working for
Wait a
me.
second.
Check it out. You check it out, Clint. See
Yeah,
what's
you're
going
right.
on.
What's
I'm
going on?
unauthorized as well.
What the hecky doodles?
Whoa.
All right, let me go.
Hang on, we're fixing this. Go back here to event setup. The Vimeo page.
You got it, Clint?
While we're waiting,
I'm looking
Yeah,
at
what's
it,
up?
yeah.
at what point did you think like you could teach other people this? Like not as like the knowledge, but like as what as you wanting to make this like a product? Like
That's a really good question. My prehistory of this whole process was I went to audio engineering school in 2005 in Amsterdam at SAE, which stands for School of Audio Engineering. I went to school at school of audio engineering, and as soon as I I had already done like the people in that like intake. Like first of all is Amsterdam, so there were a lot of Americans at that school that were just there to be in Amsterdam, and all that Amsterdam provides you. I was there to learn, and I already had a bunch of experience, like I was talking about earlier, just recording fucking bands that I was like, bands that I was in, bands that I was homies with, just like anybody that I could record, I was all about it. And as much as I could learn, I would. So when I got there, I just kind of hit it off with them, and I could speak English well, and I could like maintain continuity in front of people. So I as soon as I graduated from the first part of the course, they asked me to teach that same section. They were like, you were helping everybody in your cohort so well, and we liked like your vibe and stuff like that, and the course is in English, like would you mind teaching the same thing you just came through? I was like, no problem, because it was like all basics, like principles of sound, like stuff that I had kind of already known. Like my dad was an electrical engineer, so I just had a little bit of that knowledge in my head. Basic cables, like super easy shit. And that just kind of kept happening. So when I got through the audio engineering course, then I started teaching like consoles, recording techniques, recording etiquette, Pro Tools, Logic. And then I got into the bachelor's. And at that point, then they were like, okay, well, maybe you want to teach the bachelor's. But that's when I was like, I'd rather like help people get more practical experience. So we sort of built this like underlying production team. It was like leveraging the students and the SAE in like cross promotional work with companies that might need video and audio production, multimedia production, and finding students that we thought like would resonate with that. And so we sort of like built our own little production environment. And then some shit happened and I had to move back to America. And then from there I got like, it was like that. And that was like 2009. There was no work. I was like competing against, like I was from at that point I was basically from a different country. To anybody in America, you're like, your experience is from Europe. They're like, you're not American. And even then, like at 2009, like height of the economic collapse, there was literally like no work, and the people who needed work had like mad Grammys and like mad experience. So it was just no way to get engineering work, which is how then I got into just producing. I was like, well, I'll just learn to fucking produce. But that led to a bunch of other shit. Either way, that part of my career, like pedagogy and teaching, was like has always kind of been a fundamental aspect of this whole process. And I think I just got to the point where I was like, I feel like, first of all, like whenever I sit with an artist that I'm working with, they come out of it like excited and aware of things they didn't know before, like with little tips and tricks to like help them do things quicker, better, faster, cheaper. And that I just was like, man, I just, this, like, my life has changed from the shit that I banged my head against. Like, I spent months learning what multi-bands sound like. Like, maybe I could help other people and then expedite their journey, because the thing for me that was missing through that whole process, like as much as SAE was dope and making beats was dope, was that there was no, like, there's no roadmap to the whole thing where you're like, I want to start here and I would like to be able to be at this place of proficiency by this point. And everybody's like, oh, we'll teach you engineering. Like, oh, we'll teach you mixing. Oh, we'll teach you mastering. But you show up to these places and oftentimes you're confronted with either content or equipment or people that doesn't fit what you need to know. And so that's really where we sort of had this concept with Dojo, was just to be like, you know, take how I work and put it into a course with the previous experience of already doing teaching. And it's, you know, I think it's, for me at least, I'm enjoying the shit out of it. Like, I love this place. Like, you guys are awesome. But hopefully for the rest of you, you're getting something out of it and it's helping you level up your stuff as well. So that's the ideal.
Great answer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so wait, so now that Vimeo link is working, yeah?
Correct.
Are we still broadcasting to it?
Sick. So if any, so if we're, we are.
Okay, dropping
at
you
least
in,
I believe
Clint.
so.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, so if anybody's checking out the Vimeo link, this is Guilford's of Maine, right? I've been building acoustic panels, and so they have a lot of colors. The
swatches.
The Anchorage and Open House series. And what's cool is they actually give you acoustic information on the back of the card, which if you're watching the video, it basically says here acoustical performance for panel applications, and gives a graphical readout of the acoustic termination coefficients and all that sort of stuff. It gives basically it's the transmissibility of audio, how well it will allow audio to permeate through it. Basically it's just how breathable the fabric actually is, because it's super important if you are even like an absorber, like things that you think that you want to catch the sound, you actually have to allow the sound to come in. So there's a lot of fabric out there you could use for this, but Guilford's of Maine, for whatever reason, just has a line dedicated to acoustic upholstery. So
dope.
Yeah.
I want all the colors.
Yeah. Actually, when you look at it under sunlight, they have a lot, like basically every color that you would want. In fact, I think GIK Acoustics they have like their own cheaper kind of it, but then if you opt for like the upgrade or whatever to Guilford's, it's every color in every studio you've probably ever seen has probably been a GIK panel, and it's probably been Guilford's of Maine fabric, more than likely.
Excuse me.
GIK is huge in the audio world.
Yeah. So what's up? Any more questions? What do we got?
I can keep going. I just wanted to table myself for a minute.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, like I could probably keep going until we don't want to go anymore. But I'll start out with probably the most important questions I'd say that would relate to the most people in this chat. So when I came out with my first question, I'm gonna apologize because my headphones died and I missed like the first 45 seconds of your answer, Seth. So I apologize if this is a duplicate, but I wanted to go over this is something that I thought was really cool, and I really appreciate you guys doing this for us, because I think this is something we've all been looking forward to. But the terms of I saw a post recently where it was something along the lines of being certified or being put into, like, I don't know if it was worded graduated or something like that, but how exactly would that work? Because I don't know. I just saw that one post, but how would it work to be certified that the approach and the curriculum and things like that? Just if you could speak to that.
That's a really, really good question. I know that that is on Clint and my list of quantifying. We have not quantified that. It's ideally for me, what I would look for, which is this is me just putting out what's in my head. It's not where we're gonna. Maybe we don't end up here, but I would want to know that you would have a workflow methodology to maintain perspective, that you could reliably get through a piece of content from like point A to point B, like, so wherever it's starting to wherever we're supposed to end up. And maybe that's a full mix, or maybe that's just nailing the nugget. Like, I'm not sure what the quantifier is, but to understand that you could take in a piece of material, test through it, and get it to a point where objectively, X, Y, and Z, like, if whatever that criteria is of, like, okay, so it's starting here, but it needs to be delivered as such, that you could make it through that process in a reliable amount of time, so that there would be a facet to it that was, it's like, technical, is it done? And there would be maybe another facet to it of, and is it happening in a reliable amount of time? That's not necessarily speed. If it takes you 10 hours to do it, okay. But if it takes you 10 hours every time, that's all that matters. Because then those are things you can convey to clients and charge money with. That you're like, I can do it, and I can do it reliably. And that's for me where I would quantify a certification. I don't know about you, Clint, what you might think would be important to have in there.
I think those are both really good. It's like level of technical proficiency in at least getting it objectively better than it was, closer in a direction that is closer to the reference that you would have.
There you go.
It's
references. Yeah.
It's kind of like if we drop you in the middle of the forest and we give you a map and we tell you there's a city there's a city there, are you going to get closer to the map or closer to the city and using the map? And if so, how much closer and how fast can you get to the destination? It's kind of
Totally.
one of those sort of deals.
Yeah, and I
It's
wouldn't want the time.
proficiency in time.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want the time part to be like where you're like, oh, you have 30 minutes to do this. But I would want to see it.
Like that.
I would want to see it happen in the same time frame where you're like, that you've got like the window that it takes to do it is reliable.
Right.
Gotcha.
It's like if you mix a song really well, and it takes you 10 hours, that's cool. And then the next time you do it, you got some results and it took you 20 minutes. That's inconsistent to the point where you'd have difficulty kind of quantifying how much to charge and things like that. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
have to have a
I'm not looking for a standard test, and I'm not assuming it's going to be. I'm assuming it's going to be different person to person, since we're on more of a personal level with this type of curriculum and this type of course, which I really appreciate. But I just, I guess I'm wondering. It kind of sounds like you guys have some sort of a plan as terms of a unique standardization of a curriculum that would be personal but also standard. So I guess I'm looking forward to that. And I appreciate you speaking to that.
Yeah, and we're right now, I mean, I think that's where the student advisors really come in, is where like that's kind of where we're allowing it to, as we get more standardized, and specifically like with the feedback channels and stuff like that, if any of you are like, hey, like we want more of this, like please add it. Like, of course, that's why we're here. I think there was a Hellbrock also mentioned that maybe there's a survey that we can put up. We're looking into that to get more feedback to add in. But obviously, we want to be able to say, when we finish with sort of this like weekly best practices stuff towards the middle of the year, weekly live classes stuff to the middle to the year, we want to make sure that that's as comprehensive as we can possibly make it, so that anybody that's coming in, all of you that are in here, can take it in, digest it, maybe work with a student advisor or so, but then you end up with basically everything that I know about what I do. That's it. I'm just like, I want to put it all in there. And then from there, of course, when we pull it back around again and it becomes cyclical, that's like the more school model. And of course, people joining at that point, it's going to be a totally different experience where there will be like educators, teachers, lecturers, probably different than me. And they'll be going through the video material from the past, but with like weekly goals in mind. And so it's just the experiences are like, it's just so different to go from the weekly thing to the school model. And so we're trying to like bridge that gap. And that is where we're like, we want to make sure that all of you who've come in here and started with us, first of all, feel like the love and the support and the reciprocity, and knowing that like, first of all, like clearly we're all in this boat together. And that means that your success is our success. So if you all are like, I need more help here, or you all are like, this like would make the difference for me between A and B, like that's something that we want to know, because then we can help you in that goal, and then we all win. Like then it's like the first people that came through this program are killing it and are great at what they do and loved it, and that helps us and the school. So like we all have a huge mutual interest in each other's success, for sure.
Thank you for speaking to that.
Yeah, easy. Easy. Hear me now. What else we got? There's so many lurkers. Does everybody say just want to stay lurking? You don't have to talk, but just know that we're friendly.
I'm not.
Well,
I'm mean.
You were certified. I think, I don't know, is there certified?
I'm definitely certified. I'm fully certified. Yeah.
He's got that blue check,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, I've been
Verified.
certified in other like aspects of my life, and there are definitely things that I enjoyed about it and things that I don't enjoy about it. But
okay.
What are your opinions on certification in the audio world? And where do you think the approach could take us?
Well, my goal is one of our big goals, like after we get through the development of the rest of the supplemental course content that Clint is currently in the process of shooting, that we've written before that, like there's so many things that like are missing. Like, so we're developing content. Anyways, my feelings on the whole certification thing, why that's happening, why we want a facet of that, is because I would like it to be where, and this is what I'm trying to create and calling in, that I'm like, if I can establish myself in this business and that I'm fairly aware that everybody at the top is kind of making it up as they go and phoning it in, that we could generate an entire army of people to sort of undo that system, specifically people who are ready to work wherever, can work wherever, understand the technology, etc. So I feel like there's like a huge disruption aspect to this whole thing that I'm trying to do. And that's also why part of the next bit for me is bringing work to you all. So I already got too much work showed up just the other week, like too much. And the deadlines are all on top of each other. And so we're already starting to bring in more people. That said, the goal here is to do that at scale, to be able to be like, hey, if like for my audio engineering business, if you want to come to us, like, sure, you could hire me at this crazy fucking rate, or you could hire Clint at just below that crazy fucking rate. But also, we've got an army of people who are capable and able to do this type of work, who are fucking awesome, and who we say can do it. And so for me, that's the sort of meeting point of why the certification exists, is to sort of create that level of standardization in the business in general, because everybody is making it up as they go with their own complete batshit techniques. Like everybody's just doing whatever they want. I promise, as much as everyone's like, oh, don't do that, like those people definitely go and do the thing that they told you not to do. All of them, which is part of why they tell you don't do that thing, because then you don't learn that that's how you get that result. You're like, oh, I shouldn't do that. But either way, if we can create that, when we can create that sort of bridge of, hey, here's an army of people who are ready to crush the game and who can supplement specifically. There's like right now, there is almost every touring artist cannot afford proper records. Like they can't make them right now. They can't hire engineers. They can't, because there's no fucking touring. Doesn't exist. So there's like literally everybody at the bottom, they couldn't afford you because they don't make money anyways. And everybody at the top, nothing changed for them. But below 95% and above 10% is the meat of the entire music business that does not have great budgets right now, but needs to get shit done. So, and has to work remotely. There is a huge audience for people that need people who are competent, easy to work with, can understand the technology, and deliver on a timeline and a budget and at a specific proficiency and quality. And so that's what I'm sort of what I want to get in front of, and to have a group of people that we can just start saying, yeah, feed us the work, watch, it turns around regularly and at a specific standard. So that's my whole reason for certification, is like the big mental music business sort of market model of, I think that there is some value in that specific context. Otherwise, like certificates are just maybe like pieces of paper. Like I could print a doctorate from Harvard right now, go online and put my name in and print it.
Me next.
Add the little sticker and put it on the fucking wall. But I think for us, why I want that certification is that we would need to make it so that when we said, yeah, this person can do this, that maybe even on top of that, there's some facet of like tangible like action where you're like, it's not just a certification, but like, here are the records that got put out with that certificate, or here is their artist career, or here is the before and after, or some tangible, like this means something. It's not just like a piece of paper.
Great answer. The only reason why I asked that is because like I'm a certified master tech, and I can totally email support about that just to get y'all's ideas, and I'll like attach photos and stuff.
Cool.
But
yeah.
Great answer. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Because
Yeah,
that makes the difference.
Well, and I've had that, like I part of this comes out of that experience that I had at SAE, where I was like, yeah, I spent about 30 grand, and like I did learn about recording consoles. That is where I learned about recording consoles. That's where I learned some stuff in there, but I didn't learn at all how to mix or master. Like, I learned stuff you shouldn't do, but I didn't get a lot of stuff that like actually would help me get work or turn products reliably or any of the shit that we're kind of going through here, or like the ear training stuff. Like, they were like, oh, you can check out Golden Ears if you want, but like there was nothing in there. Like, rarely in audio engineering school did we listen to shit. They talked to us about engineering a lot, and it wasn't like there was some practical shit, of course, but like mostly it was just like somebody telling you what is good and what is bad and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. But it wasn't a lot of like, I want to do this. We're like, oh, you're mixing hip hop. I mean, there was a bunch of electronic producers in there that were just like, what the fuck did I spend this money for? Like, I want to learn how to do my shit. And actually, one of those guys works with Tiesto right now. Like, one of my homies is like Tiesto's dude, because he was just like, fuck this, and like left and just kept doing his production thing because they weren't helping him. But
Actually,
yeah,
when I was teaching at SAE, I would tell students to, like, if they were just beyond good at what they were doing, I would tell them like, hey, you don't need this. Like,
yeah,
you do not need this if you're this good right now.
But some people want the degree. I mean, some people want the certificate, and I also
Yeah.
know that there's some level of that, like
Exactly.
especially like if you have like parents and shit that are paying for this, that like they might want
Yeah,
something
that's my
like
parents.
tangible, you
They
know?
wanted me to get a degree.
They want the
Yeah.
fucking paper, yeah. And so to be able to offer that, I think, is also just nice. But for us, for me at least, like, I mean, I like laws really aren't about the paper. It's just about like how we believe we should be towards each other, or what we believe the right thing to do in this scenario is. And so conceptually for me, it's more important than like the document. Conceptually for me, it's I want to be able to have an army of people that we can disrupt the music business with, rather than just have an army of people who like have like a useless document, you know?
This is like the perfect time for that too. Like,
yeah,
on like my thoughts on it, you know?
Oh, we definitely fell into a perfect storm. Like, I'm not praising COVID. I'm not like, yay, COVID. Like, but you know, if in my life and in my experience, as much as I can turn something into an opportunity, like I will, because the more it's just like, you know, I don't believe in like necessarily like positive and negative. It's just kind of all one thing, and it's how you see it. And the more you can create positivity, the more you can build, the more you do create good stuff, and the more the earth is good and we're good to each other and shit like that. So that's really where I'm like, okay, well, fuck, everybody is already in this stuff. If we can start getting some work in and funneling it into people who aren't charging and who don't have, I mean, that's the other thing. It's like what you're competing against. Like, you go to any of these big studios, their fucking overhead is millions of dollars a year. And equipment and technology fixing and in updating of software, like the licenses that I have. We're talking about a lot of plugins in this one little room. Have 8 of them, you know, and then have your staff. Like, there's some studios that have like cookie people, where you're like, you press a button on the console and cookies come in from people who make cookies on site. You're like, dude, the cookie people alone have to be like $30,000 a year. They don't even get me into the cookie supplies. Like, so this is like, you're competing against like behemoths that can't turn the boat. Like, they are just headed towards the fucking shore. And sure, big shit will pick back up again. But that divot that was made in those middle-level artists, like, that's going to carry on for like another 18 months at minimum. You know what I mean? There's still going to be that. And then when they pick back up again, you can integrate yourself as part of that process and still charge good money, but way undercut these huge rooms with these big engineers because they just can't move. They're like, oh, fucking Maserati has houses that he has to pay for. And I mean, some of these people have like $500,000 in speakers, and that doesn't even get you into the cabling. Like, the cabling is 5 figures of cables. So, you know, like, most of the rooms that I've built have been 4 figures in cables. But like, when you get $500,000 speakers, like just the cables that go to the speakers are $5,000. Bam. You know? So like, how do you move that boat? What do you got?
Yeah. Seth, Rep has a question in the chat.
Okay.
So the question is, so when you have a 2-track beat, what are some of the things you kind of look for first? And I asked if that was with regards to mastering or if it was regards to what that was for mastering. He says mixing. So
Okay.
That's
you-
Rep. Yeah, Rep. Can you expand on that question a little bit, or
Rep can jump in.
typing? Yeah, Rep's typing.
Okay. Yeah. No worries. No worries. Rep might have background noise or whatever. What I would say like
yeah.
like right away is like if you're talking like a hip hop beat, if it's not knocking, like if you don't have bottom end moving, like it doesn't matter. And good beats like Jay-Z's Hard Knock Life, like that's such a great example of like it's a 4-bar loop the whole time. Most like early Beastie Boys shit, 4-bar loop. There's so many great examples of tiny ass snippets that are just, if they go hard, work. And I would just automatically go to the bottom end and just make sure that like I'm enjoying myself and it's moving air in the studio, or in the headphones, whatever. Like if I'm feeling it, and not to like hype your own shit up, like that's another thing, is like you should be pretty critical of where you're at. Like if you're not like vibing on it, but that's also where references come in. So like, I would have in a couple beats that I knew go hard, and then I'd like put that shit on and like vibe out, and then switch it over to my shit and feel sad, and then fix my things, and then switch it back and just kind of go through that process. That'd be what I would do. And the low end always. Like that's also like one of the things that I think I get hired for, is just being able to quickly and efficiently dial in low end. Because it is kind of like, for some reason for people, it's like a mystery. And I understand why, but there's a lot of things you can do to like get to know it better. And then once you get that feel for it, like it's just like that was the thing like growing up that like I learned about like bands, was like the singer can sort of riff, like doesn't necessarily matter. Guitarist can doodle, but like if the band's bass and drums suck, that band is going nowhere. Like there's been amazing bands that just shred. Like that's why James Brown's band was so good, because he had the rhythm section just locked, like bass and drums, like everything else like on top. But if you don't have rhythm section, like the rest of it just doesn't matter. And I think that's like for every genre besides like folk music. I don't know, maybe there's other
even
genres.
folk music, like because like bluegrass, like
I guess you're right. They still have like baritone. They still have baritone shit.
Yeah,
but maybe not like
upright
maybe
bass.
Yeah, exactly.
It ain't the focus. It's not the focus.
No, but still,
Yeah,
like
so
the pocket
there's
is important. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. They're doing almost 16th note arpeggios the entire song, so they're always in pocket for sure. Like I was, so for anybody who doesn't know, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm from East Tennessee. Obviously, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, that's we're in Appalachian mountain range. So
Appalachian.
that's Appalachian. It's a big
That's where
bluegrass country,
bluegrass
and
grows.
I went to a lot of like I went to a lot of festivals as a kid, just little cultural festivals, harvest festivals, things like that. And there's tons of bluegrass music everywhere. And I didn't really care for it. Wasn't against it. I didn't really care. When you're a kid, you don't really know any different. And then as I got older, I wasn't into it. But now I've actually gotten back kind of into it. I know some people in Nashville that make bluegrass music, and I am unbelievably, just unspeakably impressed by their levels of musicality and their sense of timing and rhythm and harmony and melody. They are godly at their instruments.
Oh yeah.
And they are insane. I mean, people that make one guitar sound like three, it's
or the
really,
percussion
really
that they'll get out of the bodies when they'll start playing the bodies in like the syncopated offbeats.
100%.
And you swear to God, you're like somebody's playing drums, but no one's fucking playing drums.
No one's playing drums, and then they have what's called a picking party, whenever a bunch of high-level bluegrass musicians just get together to jam, and it sounds so impeccably good. And sometimes they're just like, it's kind of like jazz in a way where, there's like these standards, everybody has like jazz standards.
Sure.
And there's like a set group of songs that everybody just knows. So it's like, hey, do you want to play that one? Like, yeah, all right, 1, 2, 3, here we go, and then they just take off. Yeah, and Onkus, if anybody is interested in bluegrass, sort of an accessible input into that is the artist named Billy Strings. He's like I guess he's about 28 years old now, but this guy is absolutely going to win multiple Grammys at multiple points in his future. He's unbelievably good at the guitar, but he's like a metalhead, which is the coolest thing.
Well,
He's
that's
like
where the
if you
guitar
took a
comes in. Yeah.
metalhead, 100%. Yeah, it's a metalhead that was raised on bluegrass and loves metal and loves all kinds of music. Total rebel spirit, drives like a '69 Camaro and has tons of tattoos and stuff. Blown out ears from gauges, getting ripped out at a metal concert. But he's like one of the premier
Yikes.
bluegrass artists in the world right now. So Billy Strings is kind of cool if anybody wants to look him up. Actually, a question in here actually from
I like how we jumped
Thomas
right from
Xavier.
hip hop to bluegrass.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
great. It's
yeah,
fucking
talking about
Q&A
pocket.
time. Let's
Yeah.
go.
It's Q&A. That's what we do. Thomas Xavier, I see your question up here. Thoughts on sonar works to help tune a room? This is a cool. I love
Oh
this
yeah.
question.
Oh yeah, Clint,
So,
that's you, man.
Okay. So sonar works. It's great. Having said that, it's not the best, and it's just a simple reason for that. If anybody knows different, please tell me. I need to know. From everything I know, I'm looking at the word bluegrass, and I said bluegrass. From everything I understand, sonar works does not correct phase. That's a no-go for me. It's still really good. If you're for like headphones,
Can you elaborate on what
it's
you mean by
awesome.
phase? Can you elaborate what you mean by phase? What
Yeah.
what would that
So,
what
for
or
example,
what would
phase.
correct phase? What would
Yeah, so there are so first let's describe the problem. The problem is that the software itself is really smart in that for anybody who doesn't know, the way the software works is you set up a microphone and where you would normally sit when you're listening to the music. You played some specialized test tones through the speakers. It then records the results of that coming through your speakers, interacting with your room, and then bouncing into the mic, then runs some calculations and kind of corrects those mistakes that it hears and tries to level out your speakers so that they perform well in any space. The problem is that there's two things. One, it is not smart enough to know what it can't fix. So there are problems with room acoustics and studio setup that go beyond the performance of the speakers that actually have to do with the room's physical geometry, and those are called room modes. And the speakers can create what's called a standing wave in the room by the length of your room actually lines up with the length of a certain set of frequencies, the wavelength of those frequencies.
Mhm.
So when that happens, it gets some really boomy or some complete holes in the bass. And so SonarWorks is not actually great at knowing when it can correct for things of that nature and when it can't. It's going to try to apply an EQ constantly to frequencies that are high and frequencies that are low. And those low frequency problems, it's not ever going to be able to fix because the problem is a geometric one regarding your physical space that you're in. So that's problem number one. And problem number two, as far as I understand, it won't correct and align the phase between the subwoofer and the top speakers if you're using a subwoofer. So whenever you take these measurements, it will test the left speaker and its acoustics, and then it will test the right speaker and its acoustics. It'll run a ton of calculations and come up with like the best average EQ curve to kind of compensate for faults in your monitoring environment. But the problem is that because it's doing so independently left and right and then kind of combining those together, it's not actually accounting for the subtle timing offsets between the speakers as they hit the listening position. So the problem with that is that you can get it is smart enough to know some ways around that, but it doesn't do the best job of always maintaining this perfect harmony of timing between the left and the right, and if you have the sub integrated into those left and right tops. So until you have a software that does those things, and there are softwares out there that do that, you actually have to use other software to correct for that, and then you can load that, like you generate a file and then this file called an impulse response, you can actually load onto a physical box that lives in between your depending on your setup, it can change, but it basically lives somewhere before the speakers so that any sound you send out gets ran through this specialized file, corrective file that you've generated, which does correct for not just frequency, but also the timing differences. And then it'll change what you're sending out to the speakers to compensate for the faults that the speakers are going to have at your listening position.
That's what Mr. Bill uses, by
That's
the way.
some-
That second one, with the in between box. And the
Oh, really? Yeah. Do you know what? Is it a mini DSP?
No, I think it's a mini DSP. I mean, I remember he asked me the same thing. He's like, "What do you think about the like the room tuning software and shit like that?" And I had never had a really good experience with it. From my experience, it was just the way the filters sounded, and I was noticing like massive changes in imaging. There was another thing, like the image would get like from where it was to like super narrow. And
yeah,
I mean, it could have been how I was
'cause it's
shooting it or
trying to
using
do
it,
its
but
best,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that has to do with just the fact that and it could be that it is correcting phase, which would make it sound more narrow. It's giving you a more defined center image, but I've not had a whole lot of experience with it myself, but I do know that there's other software that will do it better. It's just not like I consider SonarWorks for studios kind of like the Apple version of like a computer product. Like they give you a really easy to use interface. It's super streamlined, super intuitive. Anybody can do it, and they just walk you through it from A to Z, and you can get results that sound fucking awesome, like way better than your untreated speakers. For headphones, it's impeccable. Like I highly recommend it for headphones, but I mean, I'm not going to say I don't recommend it. I would say, going back to what Bob Mack was saying, you know, that's the icing on the cake. You don't really worry about that. You actually really need to be thinking about your physical position. Like the cheapest benefit you can get from your studio is going to be positioning the speakers correctly. And I don't mean just the equilateral triangle that everybody's kind of familiar with already. I mean like really diving deep into the geometry of your room, downloading some special calculators that I could link you to. There's a whole lot more that goes into the positioning of a setup than just placing them where you think they look cool
Or
they
what
sound
speakers you
cool,
bought.
and then or what speakers you bought. Yeah, actually that depends. That's actually a big point of it. I'm glad you brought it up because like Genelec, for example, like if there's ports in the back of the speakers, like a bass reflex system, they're actually relying on you putting them closer to the wall so that the sound will bounce off the wall and give you a more proper low end response. So it really does depend. Okay, wait. So Thomas Xavier, you say it shows phase. Let me take a look at this. Okay, this is interesting, and I'm glad somebody can finally give me an image of this. I don't own it clearly. I've used it a couple times, but
Can we full
so
screen
that's
it?
the
for
phase
the screen?
response.
Clint, are you on your screen?
Yeah. Yeah. Give me one. Yeah, go ahead.
You're in.
Let me get my Discord here. Yeah. So this is SonarWorks.
And yeah, you're in Discord too, right? Drop your screen into Discord.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well,
Okay.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just
big.
looking at the image that Thomas Xavier just posted
okay.
here. So let me pop in here if anybody wants to see me look at this. There we go. Yeah, so it does show phase. Now, if it can correct for that, that would be dope. What is he saying? He says, yeah, agreed. He his room with panels in every corner and ATC SMC. You have ATCs? Oh, you lucky dog. Nice. With no sub. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, we see the phase here. I'm guessing it says orange is phase? Or it shows phase. I need to use this software more. But if it does correct for phase, then it's probably dope. but it still is going to be icing on the cake no matter what, simply because of the fact that there are going to be things that it cannot fix that it will try to fix, especially things below what's called the Schroeder frequency. Schroeder frequency is kind of this number usually around 250, 260, 280 hertz, where it's the frequency at which what we call the transition zone. It's the frequency at which anything higher than that in terms of frequency is going to behave like rays against the surfaces of the room. So higher frequencies than the Schroeder frequency are going to bounce around in the same way that light will bounce off of a mirror. They're very directional. But below that, it goes from behaving like rays to behaving like waves, and will be more wave phenomena. So you'll have to deal with a lot more modal problems down there. So, oh yeah, and look at that. So that's really flat. So that's what it would be like if you simulated it that's what it would look like afterwards. Yeah, so I would say there's never going to be anything that can make up for really good proper studio acoustics in the beginning, like positioning of your speakers, and I mean to the nth degree. When Seth and we did this studio build in Maryland, and I was physically adjusting the speaker by as little as like less than a 1/16 of an inch at a time to time align these speakers to within 1/44,000th of a second at listening position. So that is super important. And simply put, unless the software is even taking the overall left and right timing into consideration, which I'm pretty sure it might. I don't know for sure. I haven't read a whole lot about it, but if it doesn't, then it might be causing more problems than it's solving. Clearly, it's working because a lot of people love it. But it's not a cure-all, but it is probably pretty good, especially for the headphones. I don't know if anybody has ever used it for headphones, but it is great for headphones.
Yeah, I
Like
so
you
I
can
guess
correct for.
my other thing about Sonar is just that level of like, you know, a lot of people love what are those weird little acoustic bowls? Like the hi-fi world. Okay, I'm just like kind of pointing back to the hi-fi world. The hi-fi world is nonsense. Like if you want to make a lot of money, go sell snake oil in the hi-fi world. There are $1,200 USB cables.
Oof.
$1,200 USB 2.0 cables for
2.0,
and not long. I'm not talking like 8,000 feet of cable. You're like, well, of course, Seth, it's 8,000 feet long. It's $1,200. Like that's what the price of nickel is. It is not that long. It is like 6 feet of fucking USB for like hyper professional audiophile DACs for $1,200.
But one kiss says, but fidelity.
I know, exactly. It is exactly like that. So I just, there's this part of me that's like, you know, I'm not saying SonarWorks is bad, and I'm not saying you haven't gotten great results, Thomas Xavier, out of your room. As much as you might possibly be able to, try and get into rooms that are tuned by people who know their shit. And you can go online and find theaters and find concert halls and find like planetariums, all kinds of fucking spots tuned by Mr. Bob Hodis, tuned by Clint. You know the other guy as well. There's like basically two tuners.
Oh, Carl Tatz.
Yeah. Find their rooms, because there are rooms you can get into that the public can access. Theaters, restaurants, etc., where you can
MTSU,
go. Yeah, and listen to the rooms. And if you can, just like find a buddy, find somebody, go to a Facebook group, whatever. They'll have a listening session. There's something, and get in there and have a listen to the space, because when you hear those spaces, that changed my life. Like being in a room that was properly tuned,
for sure,
versus everything that I had been doing before that. Because once you know that, you're like, oh shit, everything I've been doing before that is in garbage. And having Bob Hodis tune a room that I ran was like the big step, because then you're like, oh, like everywhere else you go, you realize you're like, wow, the imaging is really weird, or like like Phantom Center and depth, like that aspect, or actual placement of things, or like that like pyramid that you should be able to hear of like audio and height, like getting height out of things, like all that stuff.
Would you
Tom,
say
I'm gonna
that as
take
part
the
of
approach-
your referencing?
I think that's like the hugest thing you can do, which I know is not a word. Or is hugest a word? It's a word now.
Largest, yeah.
It's huge, Clint. It's pronounced hugest.
Huge.
Huge.
Sorry, my English is
Yeah,
not very
totally.
good.
It's okay.
I'm from Tennessee.
It's the best thing you can do. The bestest thing you can do for your career is to definitely listen in as many environments as you can. And if you can get a CD in there, or an MP3 player, or whatever, you can take your phone, whatever you have to play your content in as many places as you can, the better. And the other thing to do is don't just stand in front of the speakers in one place. Like, one of my favorite things to do for concerts is like run around and find the bass. So like, there is a place in the concert where the waves will build up, and you will have way more bass than everybody else. Like, you'll have like 9 dB more bass. And maybe it's at certain frequencies, or maybe it's not. But it's kind of a fun game to go dig around, because one of the ways that you can mix bass in a space that does not help you mix bass, Dr. Seuss style, mix bass in the space doesn't have mix. Anyways, one of the ways you can do that is by finding the nodes. So if you can find the antinodes where shit is building up, you can get into those buildups, and you basically get a magnifying glass of your low end. And if you know the maths, and you're like, well, I'm like in the corner where there's no bass trap, I'm gonna have 6 extra dB of bass. So it might not tell you like, oh shit, everything's perfect. But what it is it's a physical magnification of everything that's happening in the low end. And so if you have speakers that don't make a lot of low end, you can like go to the corner of the room and find all the bass. You should be able to locate kind of where it's building up. And if you go into those spaces, you can totally take notes and then come back to listening and make changes. Like, I did so many records like that out of rehearsal rooms, like a big fucking records, because we didn't have a studio at that time. And the only way I was able to do that work was by these crazy techniques I made when I was working even in worse places, where you're like, how do you find the fucking bass? So it's not even about like that there is a perfect structure, or that there's a perfect scenario, or that Sonarworks is going to do it, or your speakers are going to do it, or your headphones, but like just being able to like dig around and know about the environment and like reference as many places as you can, because as soon as you start realizing you're like, oh, I can get this type of like frequency response out of just this one location in the room, maybe that works X, Y, and Z, because then when you end up in other places, it's not even about necessarily knowing what's true or perfect. It's like, I don't know what's true or perfect, but I know I have a couple techniques that I can use when I end up in a place I've never been before to try and get closer to what I would understand as being the thing I want. Like, and even now, like if I get to a new studio, like people all the time, they every time I get a new client, they want me to come to their studio and like work in some studio, and I'm like, I don't want to work in your studio, like no, like I want to work in my studio, like I know how to get shit out of here. Like if I have to go there, I have this whole thing I have to do where like first of all I have to listen to a bunch of shit, and then make some assumptions, and then work just regular work, pretend like you know what you're doing, and then take that back to another place that I know what it sounds like, and then go, oh fuck, I ruined all that. Okay, these are the changes I should make, and then do that again, and then come back and check it again, and then if that passes that process, then I'll like go and then check it other places. I'll be like, okay, listen to that in the car, let's give it off to some friends, let's like take it over to somebody else's house, listen to it there, put it onto the Sonos, like put it on the TV. That's one of my favorite ones is like listening to mixes on the TV, because like if you want to get your shit placed in sync, yeah, you like you have a TV, put it on the fucking TV. Doesn't matter which, literally does not matter what TV you have. In fact, the more random TV you have, or the more consumer driven TV you have, the better. That was another thing that I did early on, was like I bought the second most popular which was also the second cheapest. It wasn't the most expensive, but it wasn't the cheapest. It was in the between. Stereo system on Amazon, like $25.
Clever.
And would check
Very
on
clever.
that because I was like, it's number one, little more expensive. A lot of people won't go for number one. Number two, a lot of people go for number two, and I don't know if number one is going to hype shit or whatever. Like, I want, like, not the worst, but I also don't want the best. I want, like middle of the road shit. Like, what does it sound like on that? Does it sound okay?
Tip of that bell curve up there.
Yeah.
You want the biggest average that you can hit. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and that's like you can't escape geometry. You simply can't get around basic physics. And also there's this other facet that a lot of people are not really aware of, especially when it comes to room acoustics, is the time domain. Everybody knows that frequency response is what everybody wants is frequency response, but the time domain performance is so important. Obviously, you put absorption up on the walls, it's going to tune it down and kind of mute the reflections and things like that. But the high frequencies are easy to tame. It's the low frequencies that are hard, and you can spend a lot of money in a lot of wrong areas and never actually hit that time domain response. And I've done a lot of reading on about people like John Brandt. If anybody doesn't know John Brandt, his name's spelled Brandt. He's got an amazing website called like jhbrandt.com, where he has a ton of free resources under his resources page, where like this person builds studios that cost millions of dollars, and his approach to handling the low end is always about just foundational physics research. Like, you can't get around it, and he doesn't even try. He's like, let's knock out this wall. We need more space. Like, this room's simply not big enough. You're not gonna have enough space to do what you want to do. So let's not even waste our time with acoustics if the room's not the right size and dimension, and that's only the start of it. Then
what would be dope, Clint, is if you could, can you put up that the sweet
that
spot
link to that guy's site?
No, not that. The the sweet spot thing that you got with the I think I have you in there. Let me pull me back in. Nope. I'm lost, sorry. There we go. Yeah. Don't let dad drive. So there's it's ratios of the rooms, and it's the length to width to height quotient that gives you this, like, here's where you will have a better experience.
Yeah.
Because
the bolt area.
The bolt area
or the
Cha-ching.
blob.
Yeah. When you're looking for your next house, apartment, truck, whatever you're deciding you're going to put yourself, that is so helpful when you're like looking for spaces. And I've done this when I've like asked realtors to be like, okay, like I need a room in the house that's these dimensions. And they're like, okay, for what? I'm like, doesn't matter. I need these. So I just need you to exempt all properties that don't have that requirement, because it's not, I can't work. I'm going to spend too much time and too much energy, and I can't get good signal. And honestly, like,
I'm going to let's see.
Put it on the screen.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Put
I'm
it on
going
the
to say,
screen.
well, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to paste the link here for. All right, I'm going to post. Let me share my screen here real quick.
Cool.
All right, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, you're good. Go for it.
So this is all right. So this is John Brandt's website.
I can see it, just not on the stream.
Oh, okay. So
should catch up.
More or less. Yeah, it'll catch up in about 30 seconds. So these are the kind of studios that John Brandt builds. He's a amazing studio designer, and he is all about like free intellectual property. So one of the best things you can do if you're interested in learning acoustics is head over to this resources page and go down to the tools section and grab some of these Excel spreadsheets. They are very elaborate, and I actually have a couple of them. If I let me see if I can find the one that he has in here. Let me see, room. room mode calculator. Yeah, so let me just open my Excel here. Because they're probably already preloaded in the recent files. I would pull up what we're talking about. This is called the bolt area. To describe this for people is that the bolt area is simply research done by someone named Bolt, who came up with the idea that there are a certain set of room dimensions and room ratios that seem to work best for naturally balanced acoustics. The plot looks like this. Let me see if I can find a high resolution image of this. Yeah, here we go. So this is what's called the bolt area. And you can see here it's the ratio of either anything in this blob in terms of ratio, and specifically on this line is, supposed to be a lot better. It's not perfect. It's a good start. But for example, here, a room that would be 2 times the length, or whatever the height is, multiply the height times 1.4, 1.5, and that's what the width should be. And then also take the whatever the height is and multiply it by 2. And anything that has ratios that fall within this blob here are going to put you in a better place than being outside the blob for general room acoustic treatment. But the reason I didn't pull this up straight away and went instead to John Brandt is because his room mode calculators are some of, let me see if I can find here let me see if I can find my room mode calculator.
This is where you're getting the
the
acoustics module in 10 seconds from Clint Moody right now.
Yeah, we're getting into some, I don't think I have them on here. Wait, educational stuff. Yeah, there we go. Acoustics. Let's go into Excel calculators. Yeah, these suckers right here. These are really, really cool. So let's go for the Imperial, because I'm not metric system. I love the metric system, but I am not I'm not like right on top of it with a metric system like I am the Imperial system. These calculators here are next level. Not only do they have interactive modal distributions, it gives you the readout for the Schroeder frequency and a lot of information that is so far beyond the scope of this conversation. It's ridiculous. It gives you a lot of information regarding where, like, modal coincidences, so like where the modes are actually going to be building up, like what modes are going to coincide with other modes so that you can best handle them. And what's cool is like this tab right here. This is why I didn't immediately hop to bolt area. Let me get rid of that. There we go. Because he has this tab called Ideal Rooms, and in the Ideal Rooms tab, you see up here at the top, there's a lot more than just the bolt area in terms of Ideal Rooms, and in fact, there's even a worst ratio series. So the ratios of 1 to 1.07 times 1.87, actually, as calculated by RPG Acoustics. Some of the people at RPG Acoustics are some of the foundational people in the entire field of acoustics. What's his name? Mr. D'Angelo, I think is his name. Geniuses at this place. So you see here, there's all types of different ratios that you can apply to your space, and it's actually worthwhile to let me, Seth, I might have you. No, I don't have it on me. I was gonna say, if I could find my laser measuring tape. I have a laser measuring tape that costs like $25 or something.
Yeah, they're
I take it with
amazing.
me everywhere I go. Yeah, they're so good. You just stick it up against a wall, hit a button, it shoots a beam across, and then gives you a within a 1/16 of an inch measurement that's accurate. And I use that all the time. I carry that with me so that I can get the room's dimensions. If somebody's wanting me to look at a studio or something, or I just do it. I carry it with me always. It's just kind of good to have a laser measuring tape all the time. One of those things you should always keep in your car, along with a tire iron. But the point is that there's so many other types of room ratios, and actually, more specifically, whatever room dimensions you happen to have, you can actually round those to the prime number, the nearest prime number, and that will be, even better, because prime numbers don't have common denominators, therefore they won't have common. That kind of lessens your chance of having modal buildup.
Clint, can
and
you
modal coincidence.
can
So-
you speak to? Can you refresh my memory of what a prime number is?
Yeah, a prime number is a number that doesn't have any other divisor. So, for example, like
One in
number,
itself.
one in itself. Like that's it. So
7
3
is
would
a
be
prime number.
5, 1, 3, 5, 7. But they don't have to be just every odd number. Not all odd numbers are actually prime numbers. So yeah, there's
Yeah, like 15 is
fact,
not a prime
if
number,
I
right?
was-
But it is.
right,
But it is
no,
made
'cause
up
you
of
can
prime
3 and
numbers.
5.
Yeah.
Exactly. So so prime numbers are really critical, and actually a quick sound design tip that plays into prime numbers for anybody that likes to play with synths. If you want to make a really fat detuned saw wave synth, use prime numbers of voices like 5, 7, 9, because they don't have common divisors, and there will always be one voice in the center that is not being tuned while the others are being detuned around it. And so it guarantees you at least one wave that's always going to be in tune. And it's freaking best sound design trick I learned in a long time was use prime numbers of detuned voices always.
Smart.
13 is excellent. Yeah. And then so this is, you can see here from these tables, this is table C. You can calculate a whole lot of information from just one of these spreadsheets, and he's kind enough to give them away for free because he believes that intellectual property doesn't exist, that all information should be free so that we could lift the waters together. Really worthwhile to go check out. And he has a donation button if you want to donate. I've thrown the guy like $100. Like, do that. It's worth it. They're
Nice.
so worth it. And this is just one out of several. And we see here what's called the Bonello distribution, and this speaks to how many modes are for whatever dimension that you put into these yellow boxes. It will show you, and here it is again. It will give you a readout of how many room modes exist that are mathematically going to exist relative to the ideal number. So as long as the actual number of room modes that will be present is beyond the theoretical ideal, you will be good, because that means that, like, either there's like this thing, you want either a lot of modes or very few, not in between, because if you have a lot of them, they're probably going to be spread out, and it becomes very difficult to hear one over the other. And so you really want them kind of like this, where there's not really two building up on top of each other very much, and like they're very evenly distributed. And you can see here where the blue line is always above the red. That means that in that octave, there are more actual modes than the theoretical ideal that there should be. So that means that the modal distribution is diffuse enough. So that's a little bit about that. But the point is that the bolt area itself was kind of the first study in this sort of ideal room dimension thought process that people were kind of getting into, where they were like, well, they actually figured out, like, well, if your room is just shaped in a certain way, it is naturally going to sound better because the modes won't be stacking up in any one octave. So.
Well, and also to that point, that there's no room, unless you're like fully non-environmental or anechoic chamber, like you always have nodes and antinodes. Like it's just based upon the physics of space and sound.
Well, exactly. And like the studio design has changed quite a bit since the 50s, when the first studios that were coming out, actually, I believe, where did I read that? I think it might have been on his resources page. Great articles. Like, you should, this is all of your homework. Go to jhbrandt.net, go to the resources page, and read these articles, because, I mean, he gets kind of heady. Like, this dude is really smart, so it might lose you at times, but he has some really amazing information about how you can relate. Like, this one is a really good one, talking about the equal loudness contours and the human hearing perception as related to the amount of absorption needed in a room to kind of match the room's response to the equal loudness contours. Like, that is another level of sound treatment that I've never even considered until I read this. And how much isolation do you need and stuff. He's really cool. So this is your homework. Go read these articles, and this one I'll pull up for you now.
Get your
Yeah,
get your education in acoustics
go get your
tonight,
mind
children.
blown.
Yeah.
Go do it.
Like, just looking at that Excel sheet made me sweat.
Oh yeah, that dude, and that's just one. There's
I
like
know.
12 that he has.
I know.
Here's the this one right here,
Madness.
this proper speaker alignment. This is a good overview of like his CAD design of a studio, a non-environmental studio. And it'll take a second to load here because there's quite a bit of detail in it. There we go. And so what we see here is, let me zoom out just a little.
There we go.
My computer is hating me right now. There you go. Yeah, so the equilateral triangle that passes through the ear and aligns just behind your head. That's the ideal.
Yeah,
You
shoot
see
over the
right
head.
here behind his speakers. Yeah, like right through your head. Right here, these little circles or oblong circles, these are actually waveguides, acoustic waveguides. You see them also back here in the back. This is medium density wood, just MDF boards wrapped in or just wrapped in fiberglass insulation, and they actually help to trap low end really well. And you see diffusion on top of that. Really cool. A lot of really interesting resources you should definitely check out on his page. And this other one was the what we've been talking about was like balanced. Every time Seth was saying like non-environmental, what that means is that's a type of studio design where I don't know if there's a good actually. I think if you just Google Tom Hidley bass traps, Tom Hidley was a famous studio designer. Basically, the design criteria for like a non-environmental room was a room that this is it, a room that really doesn't allow sound. Oh, well, that's a tiny image. A room that doesn't allow sounds to come back at you. Essentially, it's like the room isn't even there. The sound hits you, goes behind you, and doesn't come back. This is kind of a hokey but effective
I like how
demonstration of what
the
it is.
stokedness of that individual's floating head, like completely decapitated person.
Oh,
so
yeah.
excited.
Well, he's in a non-environmental room tuned by Tom Henley, so I would be too.
It doesn't matter.
Decapitated or not.
Totally, it doesn't matter if you have no body.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you see here, this is basically just absorption all the way around the room, and then all the way on the top and the back walls as well. So it's just that like sound goes past you and really doesn't come back, so that you're only really receiving direct sound, and that's kind of the idea behind non-environmental rooms. I believe this actually is one as well. Well, this is kind of like an RFZ. There's several different studio designs. This is actually MTSU. I've been here.
What mains are those, by the way? Those are not like Asperger's,
it's
are they?
on their website. Nah, I feel like they might be Kinoshita, but I don't. Hang on.
Or Westlake.
MTSU Department of.
Now we're avocadoing again. By the
Yeah, we
way,
are.
Clint and I, when we
yeah.
get done, we're doing a bunch of shooting for the beginning part of the course with this like we're building the like intro to sound, like basics of audio shit. But then of course with Clint's knowledge and new free time, we're looking to add into more acoustic shit towards the end of the course for the advanced stuff. So all of you that are in here right now that are in the advanced course, and everybody who's bought in the approach is, we're going to have acoustics modules coming up, and there will be stuff that will help you tune your room, align your speakers, like the tools that we built to do that last room in Maryland. We're going to make sure you have access to. So fret not if everything Clint said didn't make sense.
Oh yeah, there's a
It will.
lot to cover there.
Yeah.
There's
it's an
they actually
entire
have a list
science.
of their equipment.
It's
It is. It's an entire branch of physics. Like that's,
yeah.
Yeah. They what's that? What was it? Northward. That's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it could be.
Northward Yeah, those are non-environmental rooms. This is a studio design. Yeah, there's a good one. This has Noisiest Studio, I think.
ATCs. That's Northward.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a non-environmental room, where the speakers are floating inside of a wall of glass, and they're isolated with foam and all this other sort of stuff to keep it from vibrating the glass. They're not really touching anything, except for their suspension, which is spring mounted, of course. But the room looks like it's a flat wall. Totally not. This is like a fabric, and behind that there is quite a bit of soft absorptive material so that the sound waves really just don't ever come back. After they come out of the speakers, they just go straight at you, hit your ears, go back to the back of the room, and that's it. And this is actually a big problem with like home setups, is that if the back wall isn't really treated, then the sound will come out, hit you, carry on, hit the back wall, bounce off of it, because high frequencies are above that key Schroeder frequency we talked about, and they'll bounce back, and then they'll interfere with the fresh sound that is coming out of the speakers still. So it's like you've got this old stale sound bouncing around, coming back to interfere with the new fresh sound, and that can really screw up your perception of what you're hearing. But this studio does a really good job of avoiding that. Yeah, comb filtering is garbage. All of these studio designs are immaculate. So are let's see, Carl Tats. This is the guy that tunes the studios at MTSU. This room just got demolished like 2 days ago.
Oh.
Yeah, these studios
I say we riot.
are
just burning the new one down.
Well,
whatever.
Whatever the new one is. No, it's gonna be better. It's gonna be better. And Carl Tats is also tuning it.
By the way, real quick, does anybody have any more questions?
Yeah.
By the way, we're just like off on a tangent. Does anybody? Do we want to answer more? Yeah, because I'm gonna have to wrap this up soon.
More cues?
Do we have?
I actually do too. I need to eat.
I have a quick fun one.
Yeah, what do you got?
Yeah, hit it.
So, who's this is for both Clint and Seth. Who's your favorite engineer, and what is your one desert island piece of truth?
Oh, that's easy. Seth Drake.
What?
Seth Drake's the dude. How can I mean? I can't not say Seth Drake. But if I,
I'm
gonna
say Noisia. So I'll say Noisia. I'll say Noisia, and we'll go. We'll both be on this. We'll both be on the island, and we'll just use Noisia's shit. Noisia is my thing. Noisia is my. They're like I am just their stuff has. They've done dance music, and it's held up this entire time. And like, if go listen to very early Skrillex shit, it is not that great. It has not held up the test of time, but Noisia's stuff has, and I think it's how they treat their highs. I think it's how they achieve loudness with transparency. I think it's how they manage transient response. I think it comes down to the sound design as well. They're not necessarily like
they actually, they
go
are
ahead.
super fucking golden. And I was gonna say, like, one of the things I had read, and I don't know if Seth, have you ever heard this? That when I know how the way they work is they will do sound design sessions and kind of make their Legos right up front, right? And then they will actually master their loops, their sound source content. They'll blow it up as wide as it needs to be, as loud as it needs to be, and then then when they store it in the library, it's practically mastered already. It's like just it's maximized basically. That's
well, and they're like they've just been instrumental in so many facets of modern dance music that like it's just one of those things that I think that I could still listen to so much. From there, there's a couple other engineers that I'm really in love with.
I got one.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you got?
Serban Gania.
Oh yeah, you love that.
Serban Gania. Oh my God! Yeah, this person. If anybody doesn't know, I'll type his name into the
put him
chat
in
so
because
you'll know how to spell it.
You'll never guess.
Did you guys see the Mastering the Mix website that I think it just dropped yesterday or today, and it's called like Ultimate Producer, and he's going. It's like an ear training thing, and it was actually interesting for me to. You have to buy in to get like the full features.
Sure.
But they had like basically just leveling a track to and it was tough because there wasn't a reference. So it was just we want to see how how your leveling is, and then we're gonna compare to how it was leveled professionally. But
Weird. Okay, so
it
you just
definitely was
level
good.
something.
I was
Bit-
gonna suggest like taking a look at it because I think that you guys could do something similar for the approach for the ear training there, you know, and I don't know what he has into all that, but the interface is
So
pretty cool.
actually,
Don't go
there
there.
is
Don't go
one.
there yet. Don't go there
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Yeah, don't go there yet. We have ideas. Yeah. We have ideas.
We have ideas. Yeah. So,
But that's really cool
can you
that
just-
that's
se-
working. Yeah, send the link.
That is cool. Can you hit me my screen real quick, Seth?
Hmm.
I want to show them Serban Gania.
Go for it.
This is the mixing engineer Serban Gania's website. Basically, he's every year for the last 16 years, he's won a Grammy for mixing. He's done everything from Taylor Swift to Ellie Goulding to Kygo to Dixie Chicks to Miley Cyrus to Sia to what's that guy's name? This guy, The Weeknd, Kelly Clarkson, like Katy Perry, like literally every person you can think of. He's like in the pop world, he's mixed, and he's just kind of the best at that. You know, blinding. He's the guy that mixed "Blinding Lights" by The Weeknd. He's the guy that mixed all of the like just these names. Every single person in the discography is, you know, a top 20 artist.
Nice.
Yeah, Serban, and he's a ghost. I will say that he's a ghost of the music industry. Like you don't hear anything about him ever because he's just steady grinding in the background on all of these
Crushing.
amazing pieces of music. Yeah, just crushing the world. And I think his fee I've read is something like 10 or 12,000 per mix. So
Yeah, sounds about right.
you know, yeah, like he can charge whatever he wants, but more importantly, he can work with literally anybody. So between like Max Martin and then this guy, like that's why actually one of my favorite pop songs. I really don't like pop generally, but I do really like Ariana Grande's music. Actually, this song, "God Is a Woman," the mix on those records is stellar. Like it's produced incredibly well. She's an amazing singer, amazing performer. I've seen her live, and then the mixing engineer is one of my favorite mixing engineers. So like big fan of all the Ariana Grande music just because of the collaborative efforts and the skill sets all coming together. But yeah, Serban Gania is up there. He's probably one of the best mixers in the world. If you could put like 5 mixing engineers in the world, like up on the top of all of music, he's definitely going to be in the top 5 for sure. And then Noisia, because
well, Noisia, and then I would throw in Ludwig just because, like, you know, between.
Oh, I've not listened to much Ludwig. Is that good? Really?
Bob Ludwig?
Oh, Bob Ludwig. I thought you were talking like our new artist name.
No. Yeah, Bob.
I was
Ludwig.
like,
yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
if you just have Bob Ludwig in there, you basically have. You could also do Massenburg as well, but then if you have Bob Ludwig and you have George Massenburg, then you pretty much have the entirety of like music from the 70s through the late 90s, even into the 2000s.
Oh, I got you. The number 1 music mixing engineer probably in history, Al Schmidt.
Yeah, there you go.
Period.
Yeah, there you go. You could do,
Al
you could do
Schmidt
Schmidt
is
too.
without question the best because
What about that new
Al Schmidt
Leapwing
has worked.
plugin?
Yeah, stoked on that. Go get the Al Schmidt plugin
Yeah.
from Leapwing. Go get
Should
that.
we
Go get the Al Schmidt plugin.
I've
It's
been
apparently-
wanting to ask about that.
No, it's apparently they distilled down the thing that quintessentially made Al Schmidt records. And they put his techniques that he would do super secret for years on vocals or focal instruments, drums, whatever, and buried it into a fucking tool. And the Leapwing guys are some of the craziest people. Like when we had another problem that we were looking to fix, and they fixed that problem, but then that fix of that problem also became Route 1. And that problem was we needed a filter set that was 1 hertz wide. We needed an array of filters that were all only 1 hertz wide. Which like is near
That's
enough
crazy.
impossible. Yeah, it's near enough. It's very impossible to do. And then especially then to not have any of that resonate, and then to not have the delay times be insane. But they were able to figure out that math. And even when we were talking to the people from Meyer, Perrin Meyer was having a hard time about how to do that, and he was considering to like go into FFTs and all this other stuff, and they didn't do any of that. So I don't know how they did that. I still don't know how they did that, and they won't tell me. But they definitely did it.
No, they probably never will.
It's probably simple.
I've watched that video. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably.
They watched that video when they were interviewing Al Schmidt about his plugin, and like I know one of the the reverb, for example, in that plugin is the Capitol Records chamber reverb, which is unique to that building. And
there it is.
Then they also have they modeled a Pultec EQ for one of the the lift or something like that, and like a very specific setting of the Pultec.
There it is.
And so yeah, it's like they've got a lot of information in that one plugin, and they did it and they executed it in a way that's so subtle. It's really good.
Yeah, I'm a big
Al,
fan. I'm a big fan of their stuff. Like their the last Chase record, like pretty much everything that I've been doing now has Leapwing in it somewhere. Not just because of the boutiqueness, but because of the like just the functionality and the fact that it really sounds good. Like it's the stuff that sounds great.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Al Schmidt's work, go Google Al Schmidt, and if you can't find him because there is another Al Schmidt, look up Al Schmidt mixing engineer or whatever. He's been active since the 50s. Like he's been actively recording since the 50s, and he's recorded some of the biggest names in history. And if you want to hear a song that is really, really good from him, that was mixed by him, I think it's this link right here. It's Staying There by Tord Gustafsson Quartet. Al is known for not really using a lot of EQ or compression. He's one of those guys that just finds the right place to put the mic and uses a fader. Like that's how he mixes. And this song always really got me because I found this song because of school. When I was at a critical listening class, they played this and we had to kind of pick it apart. You can hear every little nuance of this quartet and just the mix on it. Like this is one of my favorite songs ever to put on for like testing headphones or something like that. Like this is the song I go to. And yeah, it's really cool. Like Al Schmidt, he's a legend. He's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Like, yeah.
Okay, I got time for one more.
Actually,
I got time for one more
go
question.
ahead, one more.
Yeah. We got anybody else?
A rep right here's got a question. What was a mix you did on a hip hop track? Tried maybe something new as far as a plugin, and what kind of surprises did you have, Seth?
Mix on a plugin.
Some new technique that you. Yeah, what kind of new technique did you once try in a mix that kind of surprised you and blew your mind? Specifically on hip hop, if you got any there.
Auto-tuning the reverbs.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Auto-tuning.
Someone deserves a raise, right there.
Auto-tune the reverbs. And you can map them with MIDI if you're having a hard time with the tracking. If it's too reverby, you can still map the reverb to the same key changes using MIDI, and you get some really great
clever.
Weird grit that like makes people sound like future robot stuff for like aggressive rap. Interesting shit.
There you go.
Auto-tune your reverb, Shorin.
Rep. Auto-tune your reverbs. I heard AU5 once used what was Melodyne on a cymbal. Like
Yeah.
Cymbal into harmonics and repitched it.
Yeah. Get nuts. It definitely puts stuff together in ways that doesn't make sense. That's always fun.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from anybody?
Right.
Anybody didn't get to answer a question, ask a question that wants to ask a question before we jump? Is that it?
Alexandra, plugins based on specific engineers.
I can't say his name. Pugchild, Paug. I can't.
Puig. Jack Joseph Puig.
Puig Child.
Yeah.
Puig. The Puig Child is a great one. What's another one based upon people? Like I want to say Sausage Fattener, just because it's the only one that keeps coming up in jokes. Sausage fattener for
CLA.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. There.
CLA. Yeah.
Honestly, like we did. So you're all aware, there were some baked-in Waves plugins on that last Chase record, and we took them off, and then we're like, we're not able to get the same sound. Leave them on. So, like some of that Chris Lord Algae stuff and some of the Tony Maserati vocal shit actually got used for vocals and can help, like especially if you just need something to like get you that first 25-40% there. Some of that stuff is actually it's not necessarily to be overlooked. And that's another thing that I would just say in general, tools wise, is just like don't overlook anything. There's no brand that's shitty. There's just shitty uses. And sometimes you might find a better tool, but like also other times, like you might want something that's like a little bit more broken and a little bit more, or a little bit less like clear and detailed. I even had a mastering session recently where the artist, I had to go back to the artist and I was like, yo, what did you do on yours? Like, cause I can't get that. And I've been here for like 4 hours now. So I need to like see your chain if you don't mind. And then I will find ways to improve it. But like it's too stylized for me to everything I have is too transparent. And it was like the answer, the actual solution ended up being like hit it with a fucking hammer. Like just get your hammer out and just smash this thing as hard as you can, and then the diamond will pop out of that pressure. But if you just like get in there with these like super transparent, like, oh, this is amazing, this EQ, like that's not the thing for all instances. So, yeah.
Alexandra, you're asking if plugins based on specific engineers are gimmicky. I'm sure that there are some that are less, unique than others, but for the most part, like if it's a big name, they're probably not going to want it to be a shitty plugin. And also they're like, you have the most of the time it's like the experience of that engineer and kind of like their unique flair on how it might just be like the Al Schmidt thing. You might just be buying a new version of a Pultec in some regard, but it's how he uses it and how they've set it up. So you get the benefit of those years and decades of experience, along with, it's not just the Pultec style EQ in there. It's like the unique reverb. So I'd say some that are probably a little gimmicky, but others that definitely not.
Yeah, and that's why for the Wave shit, like the Waves stuff, and it may not be this way now, but it used to be. I would get crash reports that would show plugins in the Wave stuff that I didn't load. Like I would load like a fucking Pugchild, but I would get a crash report of like the Q10, and I'm like, where the fuck is the Q10? And then you start to realize that they're like using that the way Waves went about this was some modeling, but mostly they were just reusing plugins they already had and putting them in new GUIs. So like the delays in the vocal thing is probably just the fucking S-taps and with specific settings and a little bit nerfed. So for some manufacturers, they aren't necessarily going and modeling stuff like Leapwing. Leapwing I know is doing the work, and there are some scientists. For other people, they're just generally, I think, repackaging shit. But that doesn't mean that, again, like sometimes you want to eat a Twinkie. Like you might want that cheap, quick move. Like you might just be like, yeah, like I want it to sound like a fucking a Waves a Q10. Like I want it to sound like an L1. Like I don't care that that's the way it is, because that's the sound
Waves
that I'm going
L2
for.
Ultra Maximizer. Yeah, the Ultra Maximizer was like the sound of early 2000s dubstep.
Totally.
Everybody maximized shit with the
that.
L2, the Waves L2. Like it became a verb. Oh,
exactly.
L2 it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And like Brainworks has a lot of good shit, and like like there's a lot of really awesome plugins out there. Like FabFilter makes their own coding language. So definitely not all gimmicky. I wish FabFilter would make like an engineer plugin. We need FabFilter to make a plugin for like, I don't know, Serban Gania or something.
Somebody. There you go. I think that'd
be cool. All right, I have to jump myself.
Yeah.
Seth, what about you?
I gotta go, but you all can hang in there. You should make sure they're all unmuted, Clint, if you don't mind.
I believe they are. Yeah.
Okay.
everybody
If
should
you all
be.
want to
I'll
hang
hit
and
it again.
chat, fucking hang out, share the wisdom or whatever. I've got to jump and get some food. I know Clint does as well. So, but we're gonna keep doing these. I'm gonna get some interviews coming in, things you want us to cover, stuff you'd like us to talk about, questions you might have. Let's keep the conversation going. And thanks for everybody for coming in and joining us today. A lot of fun. Give yourselves
Thanks,
some big
guys.
hands.
Peace.
Yep.
Thank
Talk to y'all soon.
you.
Ow, ow, ow. Appreciate it, everybody.